Hi everybody. Before we start the story, please click the like button and subscribe to our channel. Also, tell us in the comments where you are watching from and what time it is. If you do that, YouTube will keep showing you more stories like this one. Okay, let's start now. The GPS said I'd been driving for 14 hours, but I'd only left Barrie 3 hours ago. My name's Marcus Chen, and I'm a pharmaceutical sales rep who's driven Highway 11 north between Barrie and North Bay at least 200 times in the past 6 years. I know every Tim Hortons, every OPP speed trap, every pothole between kilometer markers. On November 9th, 2022, the highway I knew better than my own street became something else entirely. It started just past Aurelia when I noticed the Esso station. The same Esso station I'd passed 20 minutes earlier. Exact same Greyhound bus at Pump 3. Same attendant smoking by the air compressor. Same faded Hunter's Welcome banner flapping in the wind. I figured I'd gotten turned around somehow, maybe took a wrong exit while changing the radio station. But my GPS showed me heading north on 11, exactly where I should be. I kept driving. The November sun was setting earlier these days, and by 5:30 p.m., darkness had swallowed the pine forests on both sides of the highway. My headlights carved a tunnel through the black, and the broken white lines ticked past in hypnotic rhythm. That's when I passed the Esso station again. Same bus, same attendant, same cigarette, lit to the exact same length. My hands started sweating on the steering wheel. I pulled over at the next service center, a lonely building with flickering fluorescent lights and a parking lot containing exactly 3 cars. Inside, a teenage clerk with acne scars was restocking cigarettes behind plexiglass. I asked him how far to North Bay. "Hour and a half, straight shot," he said without looking up. I bought coffee I didn't want and studied the road map by the magazine rack. Highway 11 ran straight north from here, no loops, no circles, just a direct line through the Canadian Shield. I'd driven it 200 times. Back in my car, I marked the service center location on my GPS and drove north with my fuel gauge showing 3/4 full. 40 minutes later, I passed the same service center. My GPS showed I'd traveled 68 kilometers north, but there it was, same 3 cars in the parking lot, same flickering lights, same geometric arrangement of vehicles that couldn't be coincidence. The fuel gauge still read 3/4 full. I didn't stop. My breathing had gone shallow, and my shirt was sticking to my back despite the November cold. I pushed the accelerator down, watching the speedometer climb to 140. The pine trees blurred into solid black walls. I needed to break whatever this was through speed, through force of will, through something. The Esso station appeared in my headlights. Same bus. The attendant had finished his cigarette and was lighting another one, and I realized with creeping horror that I was watching him restart the same action I'd witnessed 3 times now. The cigarette would burn to the same length. He'd flick it away, then light a fresh one, forever, in a loop that had no beginning. I screamed and punched the steering wheel. My horn blared across the empty highway, and the sound felt like the only real thing in a world going soft and wrong. I grabbed my phone, still showing 5:37 p.m., the same time it had been for the past 2 hours. No signal, just the emergency call's only message that meant the towers couldn't find me. Couldn't find me where? I was on Highway 11. I was exactly where I should be. The logical part of my brain, the part that had graduated with honors and built a career on evidence-based medicine, insisted there had to be an explanation. Road construction detours, carbon monoxide poisoning from a leak in my exhaust, a microsleep at the wheel causing confusion. But I could smell the pine-sharp air through my vents, feel the steering wheel's texture under my palms, taste the coffee going cold in my cup holder. I was awake. This was happening. At the next service center, the same service center, always the same, I pulled in and parked. The 3 cars sat in their eternal positions. I walked inside, and the teenage clerk was restocking the exact same cigarette carton. "How far to North Bay?" I asked. "Hour and a half, straight shot." Same inflection, same lack of eye contact. "You just told me that." Now he looked up, and his eyes held no recognition, no memory, no consciousness of anything beyond this single scripted moment. "Hour and a half, straight shot," I backed away, my pulse hammering in my ears. The magazine rack held newspapers dated November 9th, 2022, today's date. The coffee machine gurgled through a brew cycle. Everything was normal, except nothing was normal, and the dissonance was shredding my sanity like paper. Outside, I checked the 3 cars. A gray Honda Civic, a blue Ford F-150, a red Toyota Camry. I touched the Civic's hood cold. I cupped my hands and peered through the window. Empty coffee cups in the holder, a child's car seat in the back, someone's life frozen mid-journey. Were they still driving? Were they trapped in their own loops, passing the same landmarks forever? Fuel gauges that never emptied, clocks that never advanced. I got back in my car and drove south. If north led nowhere but repetition, maybe south would break the pattern. I pushed to 160, dangerous on these dark highways, but speed felt like escape. The white lines screamed past. My GPS showed me traveling south, the distance to Barrie shrinking. Kilometer by kilometer, the Esso station materialized ahead. No, that was impossible. I was going the opposite direction. I couldn't encounter the same landmark traveling south unless direction didn't matter anymore. Unless the highway had become a Mobius strip, all paths leading to the same predetermined points. I pulled into the Esso station lot and turned off the engine. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely remove the key. The attendant was smoking by the air compressor, and the Greyhound bus idled at pump 3, and everything was exactly as it had been the first time, and the second, and the third. I approached the attendant, a man in his 50s with a salt and pepper beard and a Sudbury Wolves jacket. "Excuse me," I said. He took a drag and looked at me with empty eyes. "How long have you been here?" I asked. "Just started my shift." His voice was flat, rehearsed. "What time did you start?" 5:30. It was 5:37. It had been 5:37 for 3 hours. "Do you remember seeing my car before? A silver Mazda?" He looked at my car, looked back at me, took another drag. "Can't say I do." The bus driver was visible through the Greyhound's windshield. A woman with gray hair pulled into a tight bun. She sat motionless, hands on the wheel, staring straight ahead. I walked to the bus door and knocked. She didn't move. I knocked harder, and the hollow sound echoed across the empty lot. "Ma'am, are you okay?" She turned her head with mechanical precision, and her eyes were the same empty voids as the gas station attendant, the service center clerk, everyone trapped in this nightmare with me. "Next stop, Huntsville," she said. 45 minutes. "Where are your passengers?" "Next stop, Huntsville. 45 minutes. I backed away and returned to my car. "Think, Marcus. Think like a scientist. What are the variables?" Time was broken, frozen at 5:37. Space was broken, all directions led to the same locations. The people were broken NPCs in a game, repeating their programmed lines. What had I done differently today? I'd taken Highway 11 like always, left Barrie at 2:15 p.m. like always, had coffee at the Aurelia Tim Hortons like always. Nothing unusual except the hitchhiker. Just outside Aurelia, I'd seen a woman standing by the roadside with her thumb out. I never pick up hitchhikers, company policy and personal safety, but I'd noticed her because she was wearing a summer dress despite the November cold. A white summer dress that seemed to glow in my headlights. I'd driven past. I always drive past. But she'd been staring at my car as I passed, and her face had held an expression I couldn't quite decode. Disappointment, anger, or something else. Something that looked like recognition, like she'd been waiting specifically for me. My phone buzzed impossible. It had no signal, and a text message appeared from an unknown number. "Turn around." My throat closed. I typed back with trembling fingers. "Who is this?" 3 dots appeared, someone typing. "You passed me. Turn around." The phone's screen showed no signal, no data, no connection to any cell tower or satellite. Yet the messages were coming through, and I understood with crystalline horror that I was being communicated with by something that existed outside the normal infrastructure of the world. I started the engine and drove north, or what I believed was north, though direction had become meaningless. The Esso station fell behind. The service center fell behind. I pushed to 170, the engine screaming. white lines strobing like lightning. A figure stood in the middle of the highway. I slammed the brakes, and the ABS juddered under my foot as the car shrieked to a stop, angled across both lanes. My headlights illuminated her clearly now. The woman from outside Aurelia, still in her white summer dress, standing perfectly still with her arms at her sides. She smiled. I threw the car into reverse, but the engine died. I turned the key, nothing. The electrical system was dead, the dashboard dark, even the headlights fading to black. In the sudden darkness, I could only see her by moonlight, filtering through the clouds. She walked toward my car with slow, deliberate steps. I locked the doors uselessly and fumbled for my phone, but it too had gone dead, the screen black and cold. Through the windshield, I watched her approach, and with each step, the temperature inside my car dropped. My breath plumed white. Frost crystals spread across the inside of the windows. She pressed her hands against the hood, and the metal groaned with cold. Ice spread from her palms, crackling patterns racing across the paint. Her face was inches from the windshield now, and her eyes held depths that made me think of frozen lakes, of water so cold it burned, of things that lived in dark places and waited with infinite patience. "You didn't stop," she said, her voice carrying clearly through the glass and metal. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "Everyone passes. Everyone always passes. Do you know how long I've been standing on that road, Marcus?" She knew my name. I'm sorry. I don't understand." 73 years. Since August 14th, 1949, when the car I was hitchhiking in went off the road at kilometer marker 117. The driver was drunk. I was 17. We hit the pine trees at 90 miles per hour, and I was thrown through the windshield, and I died in the dirt wearing my church dress. The frost on my windshield was now thick enough to obscure her, but I could still see her outline, her hands spread against the glass. Every day, I stand on that road. Every day, cars pass, and every day, I choose one driver who didn't stop, and I give them a choice: experience what I experienced, or take my place. "No," I said. "No, please. You're experiencing it now, Marcus. The loop, the repetition, the same moments forever, the same frozen time, no progression, no escape, no end. Except yours has only been hours. Mine has been 73 years. I was crying now, hot tears freezing on my cheeks. "I'll stop next time. I swear, if you let me go, I'll always stop. I'll help every person I see. There is no next time. There's only now, and there's only the choice." The car's interior had become a freezer. My fingers were going numb. My breath came in short gasps that crystallized instantly. "What happens if I take your place?" I managed. "You stand on the road. You wait. And someday, maybe someone stops, and maybe you're free. Or maybe 73 years from now, you're still waiting, and you're so hollow with loneliness and cold that you've forgotten what warmth feels like. And if I experience what you experienced?" She was quiet for a long moment. Then, you drive north, the loop breaks, and at kilometer marker 117, your car goes off the road at 140 kilometers per hour, and you hit the trees, and you die the way I died. That's not a choice. It's the only choice I have to give. My body was shutting down from the cold. I could barely feel my extremities. Soon I'd lose consciousness, and then I'd freeze to death in this car on this endless highway, and maybe that was a third option she hadn't mentioned. "How do I know you're telling the truth?" I whispered through chattering teeth. She pulled back from the windshield, and the moonlight showed me her face clearly for the first time. The right side was caved in, the bone structure destroyed, the eye hanging loose. That's where the windshield had hit her, 73 years ago, when she'd flown through the glass at 90 miles per hour. Does this look like I'm lying? I closed my eyes and made my choice. When I opened them, she was gone, and my engine was running, and my headlights illuminated an empty highway. The dashboard clock read 5:38 p.m. 1 minute had passed. The GPS showed me at kilometer marker 93, heading north toward North Bay. I drove slowly, carefully, watching the markers count upward. 1:07, 1:12, 1:15. Kilometer marker 117 approached, and I saw the gap in the trees where her car had gone through 73 years ago. The pines on either side of the gap were noticeably younger than their neighbors, grown tall in the decades since the accident. I pressed the accelerator down and closed my eyes. The impact never came. I opened my eyes at marker 118, then 119, and the highway stretched ahead into normal darkness, and my clock advanced to 5:39 p.m. I made it to North Bay at 7:04 p.m. I checked into a motel and sat on the bed, shaking, trying to convince myself it had been hallucination or exhaustion, but my GPS showed the trip had taken 4 hours and 49 minutes for a drive that should take 3.5 hours, and somewhere in those missing 79 minutes, I'd lived through something that couldn't be explained. I still drive Highway 11 for work. I have no choice, it's my territory. But now I stop for every hitchhiker, every stranded motorist, every person standing by the roadside. I stop, and I offer help, and I pray that my choice at kilometer marker 117 was the right one, because sometimes, late at night, when the highway is empty and dark, I see her in my rearview mirror, standing on the road behind me in her white summer dress, growing smaller as I drive away, still waiting, still hoping, still trapped, and I wonder if someday I'll check my mirror and see myself standing there instead. The fog came out of nowhere at 2:14 a.m., and by 2:15, I couldn't see my hood ornament. I'm Detective Sarah Brennan, 22 years with the OPP, and I've worked fatal accidents on the 401 from Windsor to the Quebec border. I know what highway fog looks like, the way it rolls in from Lake Ontario, the way it hangs in valleys, the way it diffuses headlights into useless glare. On March 3, 2023, between Cambridge and Milton, I encountered fog that didn't behave like fog should. It was thick, yes, but that wasn't the problem. The problem was, it was perfectly uniform, a solid gray wall that appeared instantaneously across all 6 lanes. 1 second I was cruising at 120 with clear visibility. The next I was in absolute murk, so dense my headlights didn't penetrate even a meter ahead. I slowed immediately, hazard lights on, and I should have heard other vehicles doing the same. The 401 never sleeps, even at 2 a.m. There should have been transports, late-night commuters, someone, but my ears caught nothing except my own engine and the whisper of tires on pavement. I tried the radio. Static. My phone showed full bars but wouldn't connect to data or calls. The GPS was frozen, showing my last position near the Highway 6 interchange, but the screen wasn't updating as I crept forward at 20 kilometers per hour. Then I saw the cars. They appeared as shapes in the fog, motionless, scattered across all lanes in positions that made no sense. A minivan sideways across the left lane, a BMW nosed into the center barrier, a transport truck jackknifed across 3 lanes, cab and trailer forming a V-shape that blocked most of the highway. All abandoned, doors hanging open, no people. I pulled onto the shoulder and activated my roof lights, the red and blue cutting through the fog in pulsing strobes. I radioed dispatch, pure static. I tried my cell again, nothing. Standard procedure was to investigate, so I grabbed my flashlight and maglite, checked my sidearm out of habit, and approached the nearest vehicle. The minivan's interior light was on, illuminating 2 child car seats in the back, both empty. A woman's purse sat on the passenger seat, contents spilled lipstick, wallet, keys. The keys were still in the ignition, turned to the on position. The fuel gauge showed half full. The doors were open like someone had exited in a hurry, but there were no signs of collision, no blood, no evidence of anything except sudden absence. I checked the wallet. Catherine Morrison, address in Mississauga, photo showing a woman in her 30s with 2 young children. The timestamp on a receipt in the purse showed today's date, 11:14 p.m., about 3 hours ago. "Ope, is anyone out there?" I called into the fog. My voice died immediately, swallowed by the gray. The BMW was the same abandoned mid-drive, personal effects inside, no occupant. The transport truck too, except the driver had left his logbook open on the seat. The last entry read, 2:11 a.m., passing Cambridge. Strange fog ahead. That was 3 minutes before my fog had appeared. I counted 13 vehicles in total, stretching across a 100-meter section of highway, all abandoned in the past few hours, all with the same characteristics, no collision damage, no signs of struggle, just empty metal shells with their human contents removed. The fog was getting thicker, or maybe it was moving, pressing closer, because I was certain it hadn't been quite this dense a moment ago. My flashlight beam barely reached 2 meters. The patrol car's roof lights were dimming, as if something was absorbing the light itself. I heard footsteps, not on pavement, on something that sounded softer, damper. I spun toward the sound, hand on my weapon, and saw a shape moving through the fog, human-sized, moving with an uneven gait, dragging something. "Police! Identify yourself!" The shape stopped. I couldn't see details, just a silhouette in the gray, but I had the overwhelming impression of being studied, evaluated, measured against some unknown criteria. "Are you injured? Do you need assistance?" It moved again, closer now, and the dragging sound became clearer. Not dragging something, dragging itself. One leg not working properly. I raised my flashlight and caught a glimpse of what approached. It wore a police uniform. OPP issue, same as mine. The face was obscured by fog, but I could see the badge number on the chest. 2,847. My badge number is 2,847. "Stop right there," I commanded, and my voice cracked. It stopped 5 meters away, and the fog swirled between us. When it cleared for a moment, I saw the face. It was mine. My face, my hair, my features, except the eyes were wrong, white, clouded, like cataracts had grown over them. The uniform was rotting, fabric frayed and stained with substances I didn't want to identify. One leg was mangled below the knee, bent at an angle that explained the dragging gait. "What are you?" I whispered. My own voice answered. "What you become. If you stay, that's not possible. You've been here 4 minutes. I've been here 4 years. Different times, same fog, same highway. It takes what it catches, Sarah." Hearing my own voice say my own name from my own face was triggering a dissociative response. My hands were shaking. My training was screaming this was a trick, a hallucination, something explainable. "The other people," I managed. "The 13 vehicles. Where are they?" The thing wearing my face tilted its head. "Some are still running. Some stopped running. I stopped running 3 years ago." "Running from what?" It smiled, and its teeth were black. "You'll see. It comes every 6 minutes. I counted. During the first year when I could still count, as if on cue, the fog began to move. Not drift, move, with purpose and direction, flowing around the abandoned vehicles like water around stones. And within the movement, I saw shapes, dozens of them, humanoid but wrong, their proportions subtly off, their movements too smooth and too jerky at the same time. They were searching, opening car doors I'd already checked, peering into windows, running their hands along metal and glass as if seeking something by touch. One of them approached Catherine Morrison's minivan and reached into the back where the child seats sat empty. Its fingers too long, too many joints traced the outline of where a small body would sit. Then it raised its hand to what passed for its face and seemed to inhale deeply, tasting the air where a child had been. "They're looking for us," the thing with my face said. "The ones they haven't caught yet, the ones still running in the fog." "How many are running?" 17. "Was 18, but they caught someone an hour ago. You heard the screaming, didn't you, before you entered the fog?" I hadn't, but now that it mentioned screaming, I realized I'd been hearing something, a high-pitched sound I'd attributed to tinnitus or stress. Maybe it had been screaming, too distant and distorted by the fog to recognize. "How do I get out?" I asked. My corrupted future self laughed, and it sounded like choking. "You don't. The fog doesn't let go." It appeared 4 years ago, March 3rd, 2019. Same stretch of highway, same time of night, 2:14 a.m. It caught 37 people that first night. Now it catches more every year, every March 3rd, adding them to the hunt. "That's not," I started. But the shapes were moving faster now, with urgent purpose. They'd finished searching the vehicles and were spreading out, and several were heading directly toward us. The thing with my face grabbed my arm with a hand that felt like frozen meat. Run. You can't fight them. You can only run until you can't anymore. And then you become like me, or you become like them, or you become nothing at all. I ran. Training meant nothing. Procedure meant nothing. Behind me, I heard pursuit, the soft, dragging sounds of multiple bodies moving across pavement that no longer felt quite like pavement. My foot hit something soft. I stumbled, caught myself, looked down. A man's body lay crumpled on the shoulder, wearing business casual attire, his briefcase spilled open beside him. His eyes were open but clouded white, and his mouth was stretched in a scream that had frozen on his face. Fungal growth covered his skin in gray patches that matched the fog. He'd stopped running. I kept going, my flashlight cutting useless arcs through the murk. My patrol car was gone, or I'd lost it in the disorientation. Everything looked the same, endless gray in all directions. My lungs burned, my legs were cramping. I'd been running for minutes that felt like hours. A sound emerged from ahead. Crying. A child crying. Every instinct I'd developed over 22 years of police work screamed at me to investigate, to help. I slowed, approached carefully. The crying was coming from behind an abandoned Honda Accord. "Hello, police, you're safe now. Come out where I can see you." A small figure emerged from behind the car. A girl, maybe 8 years old, wearing pajamas with cartoon characters on them. Her face was streaked with tears, and she was shivering in the March cold. "Mommy left," she sobbed. "She said she'd be right back, and she didn't come back." Catherine Morrison's child. From the minivan with the 2 car seats. "What's your name, sweetheart?" I kept my voice level, approaching slowly. Emma Morrison. Have you seen my mommy? She went to check on the accident, and she didn't come back. It's okay, Emma. I'm going to help you find her. Can you come with me?" She nodded and reached out to take my hand. Her fingers were cold, very cold, unnaturally cold, like touching frozen metal. I looked at her face in my flashlight beam and saw her eyes were clouded white. I jerked back, and Emma's face split into a smile that was too wide, showing too many teeth arranged in concentric rows like a lamprey. The crying sound continued, but it wasn't coming from her mouth. It was emanating from somewhere inside her chest, a recording playing from organs that no longer served their original purpose. "They learned fast," a voice said behind me. I spun. The thing with my face was there, having followed me somehow. Its rotted uniform rustled as it moved. "That little girl was caught on the first night, 4 years ago," it continued. "She's been here longer than anyone except the fog itself. She's very good at pretending." Emma, or what had been Emma, was no longer pretending. The small body was reshaping, elongating, the cute pajamas tearing as something larger and more angular emerged. The crying sound had become laughter, high and cruel. "Run!" my doppelganger said again. I was too tired. My legs felt like concrete. 22 years of police work, staying fit, passing every physical test. And now I couldn't run anymore. I'd reached my limit. "Can you fight them?" I gasped. "No. Can you hide?" "They always find you." "Then what the fuck am I supposed to do?" My future self looked at me with those cataracted eyes, and something like pity crossed its rotted face. "You become like me. You stop being prey. You become something else. Something that exists in the space between caught and free. It hurts. It never stops hurting. But you don't get consumed." More shapes were emerging from the fog, dozens of them, converging on our position. The Emma thing was fully transformed now, standing 3 meters tall, its body a twisted amalgam of child and predator. Behind it, I could see others. A man in a transport driver's uniform, a woman in business attire, a teenager in a fast food uniform. All transformed, all hunting. "I don't want to become like you," I said. "Then you'll become like them, or you'll die." The circle was tightening. 20 meters, 15. I could hear their breathing wet, rattling sounds that came from restructured lungs. I drew my service weapon, knowing it was useless, but needing to hold something solid and real. "There's a fourth option," I said. My doppelganger laughed that choking laugh again. With 15 rounds, against 43 of them? And they don't die, Sarah. They can't die. They're already gone. 10 meters. I could see their faces clearly now in my flashlight beam. Most were people, or had been people, their features still recognizable under the fog's transformation. I recognized some from missing persons cases I'd worked, people who'd vanished on the 401 over the years. We'd assumed crashes, amnesia, foul play. Never this. Last chance. My future self said, choose. I made my choice. I raised my weapon and fired not at the circle of things, but at the fog itself, at the gray mass above and around us. 15 rounds discharged in rapid succession, and the muzzle flashes lit up the fog like lightning in clouds. For one moment, I saw it clearly. The fog wasn't fog. It was composed of millions of tiny components, each one a miniature version of the transformed people, microscopic bodies pressed together into a collective mass, a swarm entity that could separate into individuals or merge back into the whole. The 401 wasn't covered in fog. The 401 was inside something vast and hungry that had settled over this section of highway like a predator over prey. Then the moment passed. My weapon clicked empty, and the fog pressed in closer, and I felt my future self's rotted hand close around my wrist. Too late, it whispered. You waited too long. The pain started in my eyes, a sensation like someone pushing needles through my pupils into my brain. My vision clouded, white cataracts growing in seconds. I tried to scream, but my throat was changing, restructuring, and the sound that emerged was a rattling gasp. I felt my leg crack, bone breaking and reforming at that wrong angle. I felt my skin tighten and loosen simultaneously as fungal growth spread across it. I felt my mind fragmenting, parts of me dying while other parts evolved into something that could survive in this gray hell. I'm sorry, my future self said, and its voice was gentler now, more human. 4 years ago? No, I'd entered the fog tonight, March 3rd, 2023. But as my mind fragmented further, I remembered other March 3 RDS. 2022, 2021, 2020. Every year I'd tried to escape the fog. Every year I'd failed. Time here wasn't linear, it was circular, looping, and I'd been running the same nightmare repeatedly, forgetting and remembering and forgetting again. The thing with my face wasn't my future self. It was my past self, and my current self, and my infinite loop self, all existing simultaneously in this pocket of broken space-time the fog had created. The transformed things stopped their advance. They stood in a circle, watching as I completed my transformation. When it was done, when I'd become another rotted version of myself, they dispersed back into the fog. The hunt was over. They'd caught what they were chasing. I stood on the 401 inches fog that would never lift, and I knew that next March 3rd, at 2:14 a.m., a patrol car would enter this zone. Detective Sarah Brennan, 22 years with the OPP, would see the abandoned vehicles and investigate, and I would try to warn her, and she wouldn't listen, and the cycle would repeat, because that's what the fog does. It doesn't just trap you in space, it traps you in time, running the same loop eternally, catching you over and over again, each iteration adding another corrupted version of yourself to the hunt. Somewhere in the gray, I heard a car engine approaching. The clock was resetting. It was 2:14 a.m. again, and the fog was appearing again, and a patrol car was entering the trap again. I started walking toward the sound, dragging my mangled leg behind me. Time to warn myself. Time to watch myself ignore the warning. Time to catch myself all over again. The fog pulsed around me like a living heartbeat, and in the distance, I heard my own voice calling out, "Ah! Is anyone out there?" And so it begins again, and so it never ends. My GPS said the shortcut would save 40 minutes, but it didn't mention the town that shouldn't exist. I'm Brandon Walsh, a geological surveyor working contracts across northern Ontario. On August 17th, 2022, I was driving from Thunder Bay to Nipigon, a route I'd taken maybe 15 times over the past 3 years. Always Highway 11/17, the Trans-Canada, a safe, well-maintained road with services and cell coverage. but I was late for a morning meeting in Nipigon, and when my GPS offered an alternative route through backcountry roads that would cut my travel time significantly, I took it. The turnoff came up quickly, a narrow paved road that branched east from the highway between kilometer markers. No road signs, no indication this route existed, but the GPS showed it clear as day. A direct line through the boreal forest that would deposit me in Nipigon 40 minutes earlier. I took the turn. The road was actually well maintained, fresh pavement, clear lane markings, no potholes. It cut through dense pine forest, and the mid-August sun filtered through the canopy in green-gold shafts. My phone showed 2 bars of signal, and the radio was picking up a Thunder Bay classic rock station clearly. 20 minutes in, the town appeared. It wasn't on my GPS. No label, no marker, no indication that any settlement existed along this route. But there it was, a collection of maybe 40 buildings clustered around a main street, complete with a gas station, a diner, a hardware store, even a small church with a white steeple. A sign as I entered read, "Welcome to Ashmont, population 247, founded 1923. I'd surveyed mineral deposits across this entire region. I'd studied geological maps, topographic charts, satellite imagery. No historical records of a settlement, no abandoned buildings, nothing. Yet here it sat, solid and real, people walking the sidewalks in the afternoon sun. My fuel gauge was showing a quarter tank, and I'd need gas before Nipigon anyway. The meeting could wait 15 minutes. I pulled into the gas station, a vintage-looking setup with old-style pumps that still showed price per liter in dollars rather than cents. A teenage attendant came out to serve me. Full service, another anachronism. "Fill it up?" he asked. He had a rural Ontario accent, wore coveralls with Ashmont service embroidered on the pocket. "Please, regular." While he pumped, I checked my phone. The signal was gone, dropped from 2 bars to nothing in the span of seconds. The GPS had stopped updating, frozen on a satellite view that showed only forest where I was currently standing. "Card reader's broken," the attendant said as he finished. "Need to pay inside." The gas station office was decorated like something from the 1970s wood paneling. A calendar showing August 1978, a rotary phone on the desk. The attendant took my credit card and ran it through a manual imprint machine, the kind that makes carbon copies. "You folks don't get a lot of through traffic?" I asked, trying to sound casual. "Not much," he agreed. "Most people stick to the highway. We like it that way. How do you keep this place going? Economy must be tough." He looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "We manage. Everyone in Ashmont pulls their weight." The total came to $47, reasonable for a tank of gas. He handed me a handwritten receipt with the gas station's name and address. I noticed the address listed simply Main Street, Ashmont, on, with no postal code. "What's the postal code here?" I asked. "Don't use them much. Mail comes through Thunder Bay route." I walked back to my truck, and that's when I started noticing the details that were wrong. The cars parked along Main Street were all older models 1970s and 80s vehicles, but in pristine condition, no rust, no wear. The people walking the sidewalks were dressed in clothing that wasn't quite contemporary, not costume-level wrong, but subtly outdated in cut and style. The diner sign advertised, "Coffee, 35 cents," and "Full breakfast, $2.95. My hands were starting to sweat. I got in my truck and started the engine, ready to get back on the road and write this off as some quirky heritage town that maintained an old-fashioned aesthetic for tourism or community identity. Then I saw the newspaper box on the corner. The paper behind the glass was called The Ashmont Chronicle, and the visible headline read, "Summer Festival planned for August 20 to 22, 1978. Not a reproduction, not a commemorative issue. The paper was aged, yellowed, corners worn but dated August 15th, 1978, 44 years ago. I pulled away from the curb slowly, keeping my speed down as I rolled through town. Every detail I noticed reinforced the impossible. This wasn't a town pretending to be from 1978. This was a town that existed in 1978, somehow persisting as a bubble in the present day. A woman pushing a baby carriage waved at me as I passed. I waved back automatically. She looked perfectly normal, young mother, maybe 25, wearing a floral print dress that could have been vintage or could have been period appropriate. The baby in the carriage was making normal baby sounds. Were they real? Were they people who'd been trapped here since the 70s? Or were they something else? Echoes, recordings, entities that maintained the simulation of a town. The main street ended at a T-junction. My GPS was still frozen, useless. A wooden sign with hand-painted letters pointed right for highway and left for lake access. I turned right, following the arrow toward what should be my exit from this place. The road continued through forest for another 5 minutes, then opened into a clearing, and I saw why Ashmont wasn't on any maps. The town was in a crater, not a meteor crater, a perfect circular depression in the earth, maybe 2 kilometers across, with Ashmont nestled in the center. The road I'd been driving spiraled around the crater's interior walls, and I was now climbing toward the rim. Looking back, I could see the whole town laid out below me like a model railroad setup, perfect and contained. The crater's walls were sheer rock faces, showing distinct geological layers, and my surveyor's eye immediately caught the anomaly. The rock was arranged in impossible formations. Granite mixed with limestone mixed with basalt, all jumbled together in patterns that would take millions of years and specific conditions to form, yet here they sat in a few hundred vertical meters. More than that, the rock was glowing faintly, a blue-green phosphorescence that pulsed with steady rhythm, like a heartbeat. I reached the crater rim and found the road didn't continue. It simply ended at the edge, pavement turning to dirt, turning to nothing. No connection to any external road network, no way in or out except the way I'd entered. Except I had entered, which meant there must be a road, must be a connection. I turned the truck around and headed back down into the crater, retracing my route. I'd keep driving through town, find the road I'd originally used to enter, and get the hell out. But when I reached the town center again, I couldn't find the entrance road. Main Street extended in both directions, east and west, but both ended at the crater walls with no outlet. The road I'd driven in on had vanished. I parked in front of the diner Mabel's Place, according to the sign, and went inside. The interior was busy with lunch crowd, all locals, all dressed in that subtly outdated style. Conversation stopped when I entered. 15 pairs of eyes fixed on me with expressions ranging from curiosity to what looked like pity. A waitress in her 40s approached with a menu and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Just passing through?" she asked. "Trying to," I said. "I'm looking for the highway. The road I came in on seems to have... I can't find it." "The road moves," she said simply, as if this explained everything. "I'm sorry." She gestured to a booth. "Sit down, honey. You look like you need coffee." I sat, and she poured coffee from a pot that smelled genuine and strong. The other diners resumed their conversations, but I caught glances being thrown my way, and I heard fragments of whispered discussions. "Fourth one this year. Never learned to stay on the highway. How long do you think before?" The waitress sat down across from me. Her name tag said, "Carol, how long have you lived in Ashmont?" I asked. "All my life. Born here in 53, same as most folks." "It's 1978 here, isn't it? In the town." She didn't seem surprised by the question. "That's right. August 15th, 1978. Always has been, always will be. That's impossible. And yet here you are." My hands were shaking around the coffee cup. "The rest of the world out there, it's 2022. I drove here from Thunder Bay this morning. I know. We get visitors sometimes. Not often, but sometimes. The road opens up. Someone takes the shortcut. Their GPS shows them, and they end up here, in Ashmont, where it's always 1978. How do I leave?" Carol's expression was genuinely sympathetic now. "That's the question everyone asks. And the answer is, you probably don't." A man from a nearby table joined us, older, maybe 60, wearing work clothes and a cap that said, "Ashmont Lumber." He extended his hand. "Bill Henderson. I'm the mayor, such as it is. Carol's telling you straight. We're trapped here, all 247 of us. We're trapped, I should say. Some of us have been here since the beginning. The beginning of what? Bill sat down, and Carol poured him coffee too. Other diners were openly watching now, pretending they weren't. July 30th, 1978, Bill said. That's when it happened. Some kind of experiment at the Department of Energy facility, 15 kilometers north of here. They were testing something, never told us exactly what. Something went wrong, Carol continued. There was an explosion, or an implosion, or something. The sky turned green, and there was a sound like the earth tearing open. And when it stopped, we were in the crater. The whole town? I asked. Everything within a 2-kilometer radius of the town center, Bill confirmed. Houses, people, cars, animals. All of us dropped into a crater that hadn't existed a second before. And time just stopped. It's been August 15th, for 44 years. We don't age. We don't die. We just repeat the same day. That's not what's happening, I protested. You're having a conversation with me. This isn't the same repeated day. You have memories of previous visitors. Carol and Bill exchanged a glance. It's complicated, Carol said. For us, it's always August 15th. But we're aware of it. We remember every August 15th we've lived through. We know visitors come and go. We just can't break the cycle ourselves. The road, I said. You mentioned the road moves. It opens randomly, Bill explained. Creates a connection between our 1978 and whatever year it is out there in the real world. Someone driving by sees a shortcut on their GPS, takes it, ends up here. The road stays open for a while. Could be hours, could be days, then closes again. If you're still here when it closes, you're stuck, Carol finished. Like us. I stood up abruptly, nearly knocking over my coffee. We'll help you look, Bill said. We always help. But you should know, in 44 years only 3 people have made it out. Everyone else is still here. The entire diner emptied as the townspeople organized a search. They were practiced at this. I realized this wasn't their first time helping a trapped visitor try to escape. We spread out in teams, checking every road, every path, every possible exit from the crater. I drove the perimeter with Bill as my guide, and he pointed out the scars in the crater walls where previous visitors had tried to climb out. Michael Chen tried drilling handholds in 2006, Bill said. Got about 50 meters up before the rock face just smoothed over again. Like it healed. The crater doesn't want us to leave. Why would it want anything? It's geology, not a living thing, is it? Look at the rock formations. Look at the way they glow. This isn't natural geology, Brandon. This is something that has intent. We drove in silence for a while, circling the town. Then Bill said quietly, Some visitors choose to stay. What? After a while, they realize they're not getting out, and they adapt. Learn to live in permanent 1978. Some even say they prefer it simpler times, no modern stress, a tight-knit community. We've gained about 30 new residents over the years. And the others? The ones who don't adapt? Bill's face darkened. The crater takes them. They wander too far from town, or they try too hard to climb out, and they just disappear. We find their vehicles sometimes, empty, at the base of the walls. Never find the people. We returned to the town center at dusk, and Carol was waiting with bad news. The road's closed, she said. We checked every access point. It's gone. I felt the panic rising in my chest, black and suffocating. No. I have a meeting tomorrow in Nipigon. I have a life out there. I can't be stuck in 1978 forever. You can try again tomorrow, Carol said gently. When August 15th starts over, the road might open in a different location. You don't understand. I can't. I have family. I have work. But I stopped, because I just realized something horrible. I couldn't remember my family's faces. I knew I had parents somewhere, maybe siblings, but their features were blurring in my memory. My apartment in Thunder Bay was fading from mental images. The specific details of my life were becoming indistinct, like a dream dissolving upon waking. It's the crater, Bill said, reading my expression. It starts erasing your connection to the outside. Makes it easier to stay. By the time you've lived through 20 or 30 August 15ths, you won't remember you had another life at all. I spent that night in the Ashmont Hotel, a small establishment with clean rooms and that same 1970s aesthetic. I didn't sleep. I sat by the window, watching the town below, seeing lights in windows, people moving about their eternal evening of August 15th, 1978. At midnight, the date rolled over, and I watched the entire sequence reset. Lights went out in a coordinated pattern. People disappeared from the streets instantaneously, then reappeared in their homes in the positions they'd occupy at midnight on any normal night. The town became a stage set between scenes, everything repositioning for the next performance. At 6 a.m., August 15th began again. The same teenage attendant started his shift at the gas station. Carol opened the diner. Bill began his day as mayor, and I began my search for the road again. This repeated for 5 days, 5 August 15ths. Each day I explored different areas, mapped the crater extensively, tried to find patterns in how the road might appear. Each day ended with the road staying closed. On the 6th day, I found something, a section of the crater wall that showed hairline cracks forming a pattern, not random cracks, deliberate lines that formed letters, words. Stay. The crater was communicating. I touched the rock, and it was warm, pulsing with that blue-green glow, and I felt something like consciousness behind it. Not intelligent in a human sense, but aware, present, watching. Let me go, I said to the rock face. The glow intensified, and more cracks formed words. You are home. This isn't my home. My home is out there, in 2022. 2022 does not exist here. Only now exists. Only Ashmont. I backed away from the wall, and I understood with creeping horror that Bill was right. The crater was alive, or contained something alive, something that had consumed this town in 1978 and was slowly digesting it across decades, keeping it preserved like an insect in amber. And now it wanted to keep me too. On the 14th August 15th, the road opened. I was having breakfast at Mabel's place when Carol pointed out the window. There, east side, near the hardware store. The road had materialized overnight, fresh pavement, extending from Main Street through a gap in the crater wall that hadn't existed yesterday. My truck was already running before I consciously decided to move, and I was driving toward the exit with my heart hammering and my hands white-knuckled on the wheel. Go! Bill was shouting from the sidewalk. Don't stop! Don't look back! The road climbed through the gap in a tight spiral, and I pushed the accelerator down, taking the curves too fast, hearing my tires squeal. Behind me, I could see the town receding, and the road was already starting to fade at the edges, pavement turning translucent. The crater walls closed in as I climbed, and the glowing rock pulsed angrily now, and the words appeared everywhere. Stay! You belong here! Stay. I didn't stay. I burst through the crater rim and onto normal forest road, and the connection snapped like a rubber band. I looked in my rearview mirror and saw only dense pine forest. No crater, no town, no glowing rocks, just wilderness. My GPS reconnected, showing me 5 kilometers from the Trans-Canada Highway. I made it to Highway 11 over 17 and pulled over on the shoulder, shaking so badly I couldn't drive. My phone showed the date, September 1st, 2022. 15 days had passed in the outside world while I'd lived through 14 August 15ths in Ashmont. I called my office. They'd reported me missing. Search parties had been looking. My truck had been found abandoned on a forest road, but I'd vanished. I told them I'd gotten lost hiking, survived in the woods, found my way back. They believed me because the alternative was unbelievable, but I know the truth. Somewhere in the boreal forest between Thunder Bay and Nipigon, there's a crater containing a town where it's always August 15th, 1978. 247 people are trapped there, plus 30 others who've been caught over the decades. I reported everything to the OPP, to the Department of Energy, to anyone who would listen. No one could find the crater, Satellite imagery showed only unbroken forest. It exists outside normal space now, accessible only through roads that appear and disappear according to rules no one understands. Sometimes I wonder if I really escaped. Sometimes I wake up and check the date obsessively. Terrified, I'll see August 15th, 1978 on my phone screen, and sometimes, when I'm driving at night on backcountry roads, my GPS offers me shortcuts that would save 40 minutes. I always refuse. I always take the long way, because I remember Carol's face as I drove away, and the expression wasn't relief that I'd escaped. It was envy, and I remember Bill's final words, shouted as I climbed out of the crater. "If you make it, tell someone. Tell everyone. Don't let Ashmont be forgotten." So I'm telling you, and I'm begging you. If your GPS ever shows a shortcut through the forest between Thunder Bay and Nipigon, don't take it. The 40 minutes you save aren't worth an eternity of August 15ths. Some shortcuts don't lead forward. They lead to places where forward doesn't exist anymore. The hitchhiker climbed into my back seat at 3 a.m., but when I checked my rearview mirror, all 3 seats were occupied. I'm Janet Park, 38 years old, emergency room nurse at Ottawa General, driving home from a double shift that had left me exhausted and wired simultaneously. October 12th, 2023. Highway 7 between Carleton Place and Ottawa, a route I'd driven hundreds of times in the 6 years since moving to the capital. The hitchhiker wasn't someone I'd planned to pick up. Company policy, well, personal safety policy was never to stop for strangers, but she'd been standing directly in my lane, and I'd had to brake hard to avoid hitting her, and once I'd stopped, she'd opened the rear passenger door and climbed in before I could object. "Thanks," she said. "So cold tonight." She was young, maybe 20, wearing what looked like a prom dress, formal and completely inappropriate for the October weather. Her hair was wet, plastered to her skull, and she was shivering violently. "Are you okay?" I asked, still processing the fact that she'd gotten into my car. "Do you need help? Were you in an accident? Just need a ride. Ottawa, please." Red flags everywhere. Soaking wet, formal dress, middle of the night, middle of nowhere. This was either someone in genuine distress or the setup for a robbery or carjacking. But she looked genuinely hypothermic, and my nurse instincts overrode my survival instincts. "Okay," I said. "Ottawa, but I'm taking you to a hospital. You need to be checked for exposure." "No hospitals. Just home, please." I started driving, watching her in the rearview mirror. That's when I noticed the other 2 passengers. They hadn't been there a second ago. I would swear on anything holy they hadn't been there when she got in, but now there were 3 people in my back seat. The wet girl in the prom dress, a middle-aged man in a business suit, and an elderly woman wearing what looked like a nightgown. All 3 were soaking wet. All 3 stared straight ahead with blank expressions. My foot hit the brake instinctively, and the car swerved slightly before I regained control. In the mirror, the 3 passengers didn't react to the sudden deceleration, no bracing, no surprise, nothing. They sat perfectly still. "Who are you?" I asked, hearing my voice crack. "How did you get in my car?" The girl turned her head slowly to look at me in the mirror. "You stopped. We needed a ride." "I stopped for one person. There are 3 of you. We all need a ride," the man said. His voice was flat, affectless. "We all need to get home," the elderly woman added in the same monotone. I pulled over to the shoulder, hazards on, and turned to look directly at the back seat. 3 people. Definitely 3. Solid and real. I could smell pond water and decay. "Get out," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "All of you. Out of my car. Now." None of them moved. I said, "Get out." The girl tilted her head like a curious bird. "You stopped. That means you're willing to help. We need help, Janet." She knew my name. I hadn't told her my name. "How do you know?" "We know everything about you," the man interrupted. "Janet Elizabeth Park, born March 23rd, 1985 in Seoul, adopted at age 3 by the Park family of Toronto. Nursing degree from McMaster, 2007. Emergency medicine specialization. Moved to Ottawa in 2017. Tonight you're tired, the elderly woman continued. You thought about calling in sick but didn't because they're short-staffed. You had 3 cups of coffee to stay alert. You treated 17 patients during your shift. You were kind to all of them, even the difficult ones. The girl leaned forward, and I could see her eyes clearly, now filmed over with white cataracts, like she was blind. You're a good person, Janet. That's why we chose you. I fumbled for the door handle, ready to get out and run, but my hand wouldn't cooperate. My muscles had gone rigid, frozen in place. I could breathe, could move my eyes, but everything else was locked. Don't be afraid, the man said. We're not going to hurt you. We just need you to drive. Drive where? I managed through clenched teeth. Home, all 3 said in unison. We just want to go home. My body moved without my conscious control. My hands repositioned on the steering wheel, my foot pressed the accelerator, and the car merged back onto Highway 7, heading east toward Ottawa. I was a passenger in my own body, conscious but not in control. What are you? I whispered. Dead, the girl said simply. How long? The man answered. I've been waiting since August 3rd, 2009. Car accident, kilometer marker, 117. The semi crossed the center line. I died on impact. The elderly woman spoke next. February 14th, 1992. Heart attack while driving. Went off the road near Carlton Place. Took them 3 days to find my car in the ravine. The girl's turn. May 20th, 2021. Prom night. My date was drunk. We hit the bridge abutment at 160. I was thrown from the car. Into the water. My eyes were tearing up, and not just from fear. 3 tragedies, 3 lives cut short on this stretch of highway. I'm sorry, I said. I'm so sorry that happened to you. But I can't help you. I don't know how. You already are, the man said. By driving, by being willing. The road won't let us travel alone. We need the living to carry us. Just take us home, and we'll leave you in peace. Where is home? The girl provided an address in Ottawa, an East End neighborhood near the Rideau River. The man gave an address in Canada. The elderly woman's home was in Gloucester, near the airport. 3 different destinations, 3 different directions. Impossible to satisfy all 3 requests. I can't take you to 3 places, I said. You can, the elderly woman insisted. Time works differently for us now. You'll understand. The car accelerated smoothly, still under someone else's control. We were doing 140 on Highway 7, dangerously fast on these rural roads, but somehow I was navigating perfectly. Every curve anticipated, every lane change executed smoothly, as if something with intimate knowledge of this highway was doing the driving. Through my side window, the landscape began changing in ways that made no sense. The trees were cycling through seasons, autumn leaves falling and regrowing, snow appearing and melting, spring blossoms emerging and withering. The sky was flickering between night and day in rapid pulses. What's happening? I asked, though I was starting to understand. We're traveling through all the times we've waited, the man explained. Every night, every season, every year since we died, all compressed into one journey. Watch. In the distance, I saw my own car approaching from the opposite direction. I watched myself drive past, the Janet from earlier tonight, before I'd picked up the hitchhiker. Then I saw my car again. Different color the Honda I'd owned before trading it for the current Civic. Another version of myself drove past. Janet from 2 years ago. We were traveling through time, or time was traveling through us, and the highway had become a corridor through which all versions of this road existed simultaneously. The girl's destination came first, though I hadn't navigated toward it consciously. The car pulled off Highway 7 onto a suburban street I'd never driven before, but somehow I knew every turn. We stopped in front of a small bungalow with darkened windows and an overgrown lawn. This is my parents' house, the girl said. They moved after I died. Couldn't bear to stay in town, where everyone knew, but I don't know where they went, and I've been trying to find them for 2 years. I just want them to know I'm okay, that I'm not in pain anymore. She opened the door. I felt my muscles release enough to permit it and stepped out into the night. The wetness dried from her clothes as she walked toward the house, and the prom dress brightened, becoming vibrant and new. By the time she reached the front door, she looked alive, healthy, glowing, 17 again, instead of a drowned corpse. She didn't knock. She simply passed through the closed door like smoke, and I saw a light flicker on inside. Through the window, I watched her enter a bedroom where a couple slept, and she stood by their bed, and I don't know if they consciously perceived her or if it happened in dreams. But I saw the mother's face relax, saw the tension ease from the father's shoulders. They'd been holding grief like a physical weight. Now the weight lifted. The girl emerged from the house, and she was fading, becoming translucent, her features softening. She smiled at me through the car window, a genuine smile of relief and gratitude, and then she was gone, just gone, like she'd never existed. 1 passenger down, 2 to go. The car drove itself to the man's address in Kanata, navigating through streets that existed in multiple time periods simultaneously. I saw the neighborhood under construction, saw it completed, saw it aging. The man's house was a 2-story, with toys scattered on the front lawn. A children's family lived there now. "My wife remarried," the man said, and there was no bitterness in his voice, only sadness. "Good man, by all accounts. Treats my kids well. They call him Dad now. My son was 6 when I died. He barely remembers me. My daughter was 3. She doesn't remember me at all. I'm sorry," I said again, and I meant it deeply. "Don't be. I'm glad they moved on. I just need to see them one more time. Need to know they're happy." He exited the car and walked toward the house, and like the girl, he became more solid and alive with each step. By the time he reached the front door, you'd never know he'd been dead for 14 years. He passed through the door, and I watched him tour his former home, now occupied by his wife and her new husband, and the children who'd grown up without him. He stood in doorways, observing, and I saw him smile even as tears ran down his face. His family was happy. His wife had healed. His children were thriving. That was what he needed, not to reclaim them, but to see that they were okay without him. When he returned to the car, he was already fading, his purpose fulfilled. He nodded to me once, a gesture of thanks, and dissolved into the October air. The elderly woman was the last. Her address was near the airport, and we drove there through a version of Ottawa that existed in the early 90s. The streets were different, the buildings unfamiliar, but I navigated perfectly because whatever force controlled me knew this route intimately. Her house was a small apartment building, and she directed me without speaking. I just knew to a specific unit on the 3rd floor. We climbed the stairs together, and she was solid now, corporeal, an old woman in a nightgown ascending stairs with careful steps. "My daughter," she explained. "I was driving to her house when I had the heart attack. Never made it. She blamed herself, thought I'd been stressed about visiting her. Thought the strain had killed me. She's carried that guilt for 31 years. The apartment door opened at her touch. No passing through walls this time. Just a door that had been waiting 3 decades to be opened. Inside, a woman in her 60s sat at a kitchen table, surrounded by photo albums. Anniversary of her mother's death, I realized. She did this every year. The elderly woman sat down across from her daughter, and for a moment, nothing happened. Then the daughter looked up, directly at her mother, and her eyes widened. "Mom?" she whispered. "I'm here, sweetheart. I'm sorry I'm late." They spoke. I couldn't hear the words, but I saw reconciliation happen in real time. I saw guilt lift from the daughter like a physical thing. I saw forgiveness given and received. Saw a conversation that should have happened 31 years ago finally complete. When the elderly woman returned to me in the hallway, she was almost completely transparent, her purpose nearly fulfilled. "Thank you," she said. "Thank you for carrying us home." "Why me?" I asked. "Why tonight?" "Because you would stop," she said simply. "Most people don't anymore. They drive past, locked in their cars, isolated in their worlds. But you saw someone in need, and despite your fear, despite your exhaustion, you stopped. That kindness opened the door. Will there be more?" "Always. Highway 7 is old, Janet. Lots of people have died here over the years. Most find their way home eventually, but some need help." "And if I'm not willing? If I refuse to stop next time?" She smiled sadly. Then they'll wait for someone else. Someone who still has enough compassion to see past their own fear. Someone like you used to be, before tonight. Whether you're still that person after this, that's your choice. She faded completely, and I was alone in the hallway of an apartment building that was suddenly contemporary again. Different paint, different carpet, no trace of the early 90s architecture I'd entered. I walked back to my car in a daze. The back seat was dry, no evidence anyone had been there. The clock on my dashboard showed 3:47 a.m., 47 minutes since I'd first stopped for the hitchhiker. 47 minutes to travel through time, visit 3 homes, help 3 spirits find peace. I drove the rest of the way to my apartment on autopilot, my mind cycling through everything that had happened. By the time I parked, I'd almost convinced myself it had been a microsleep hallucination, exhaustion-induced fantasy. Then I checked my back seat and found 3 small objects: a prom boutonniere, slightly wilted, a business card from a company that had gone bankrupt in 2009, a hearing aid of a style discontinued in the early 90s. Evidence, proof, artifacts from 3 people who'd needed one last ride home. I kept those objects. I keep them still, in a small box in my glove compartment. Reminders that some passengers don't need to reach a physical destination, they just need someone willing to carry them to closure. I've picked up 7 more hitchhikers since that night, all of them dead, all of them needing help getting home. Highway 7 between Carlton Place and Ottawa has become my route for these journeys, though I've learned they can happen anywhere if you're paying attention, if you're willing to see. Most drivers pass by. They don't notice the figures standing by the roadside, or they notice but don't stop, locked safely in their vehicles, protected from the inconvenience of other people's trauma. I stop. Every time I see someone standing alone on a dark highway, I stop. Sometimes they're living people who genuinely need help. Sometimes they're the dead, who need something more complicated than a ride. I've learned to tell the difference. The living cast shadows, feel warm when you touch them, breathe in rhythm with the world. The dead are colder, their shadows are wrong, and they carry the weight of unfinished business like a visible aura. Last week, I picked up a teenage boy who died in a motorcycle accident in 2016. His parents had scattered his ashes at his favorite lookout point, but he needed to attend his younger sister's university graduation. He'd promised her he'd be there when she succeeded. I drove him to the ceremony, watched him stand invisible in the crowd while his sister accepted her degree, saw him smile with pride before fading away. 3 days ago, an elderly man who'd been killed by a drunk driver in 1984 needed to visit his son's grave roles reversed. Father outliving son in death, if not in life. I took him to the cemetery, waited while he said goodbye to a son who died decades after his own death, watched him find peace in knowing his boy hadn't suffered, hadn't been alone. Tonight, driving home from another double shift, I see a woman standing by the roadside near Carlton Place. She's wearing a wedding dress, and she's soaking wet, and she's looking directly at my approaching car with an expression of desperate hope. I slow down. I pull over. I unlock the doors. Need a ride? I ask, though I already know the answer. She climbs into the back seat, and when I check my rearview mirror, there are 4 passengers, then 6, then 9. A busy night on Highway 7. Where are we going? Home, they answer in unison. We just want to go home. And I drive. I always drive, because someone has to be willing to carry the dead on their final journeys, and someone has to have enough compassion to stop when others drive past. That someone is me now. I'm the Highway 7 ferryman, the one who helps spirits cross from unfinished business to rest. I didn't choose this, but the hitchhiker chose me, that night in October, and now the dead know my car, my face, my willingness to help. They wait for me. They'll always wait, and I'll always stop, because the alternative, driving past, leaving them stranded forever between death and peace, is something I can't live with, even if it means my back seat is never truly empty anymore, even if it means I see things others don't, know things others can't, even if it means that someday, when my own time comes and I'm standing by the roadside in the cold October night, I'll be hoping someone like me drives by, someone who still stops, someone who still cares enough to carry strangers home. I discovered my car had been parked for 6 hours when I'd only stopped for 30 seconds to check my tire. My name is David Okafor, 41 years old, insurance adjuster based in Toronto. November 28th, 2022. I was driving Highway 169 through Muskoka Cottage Country, heading to investigate a property claim near Bala. Late November means most cottages are winterized and empty, the tourist season long over, the roads quiet and dark by 4 p.m. I felt the tire going soft around 3:45. That characteristic pull to the right, that means slow, leak, or worse. I pulled over at a scenic lookout, one of those roadside rest areas with a view of the lake, though in November darkness, the view was just black water meeting black sky. I got out to inspect the tire. Couldn't see any obvious puncture, but the pressure was definitely low. I'd need to use the compressor I kept in the trunk. The whole stop would take maybe 30 seconds to check, 2 minutes to inflate if needed. I walked around the car, checking the right front tire, and that's when I noticed the fog. It wasn't there before I was certain. The evening had been cold but clear. Now, thick fog was rolling in from the lake, moving faster than natural fog should, pouring over the guardrail like liquid, pooling in the parking area. I looked at my watch. 3:46 p.m. I checked the tire low but not flat. I opened the trunk, got the compressor, hooked it up, and spent 90 seconds inflating to proper pressure. Put the compressor away, closed the trunk, got back in the car. The fog had become impenetrable, white-gray murk pressing against every window. I couldn't see the hood of my own car. I definitely couldn't see the road. I'd wait it out. Muskoka fog could be dense, but usually moved quickly. I'd give it 10 minutes. I sat in the driver's seat, engine running, heater on, checking my phone. No signal, not unusual in cottage country, especially in November. I listened to the radio, classic rock from a Barrie station, and waited for the fog to clear. After what felt like 10 minutes, I checked my watch again. 9:52 p.m. 6 hours had passed. I stared at the watch face, certain it was wrong, but my phone showed the same time. 9:52 p.m., November 28th. My car's dashboard clock agreed. 6 hours and 6 minutes since I'd pulled over to check my tire, but I'd only been sitting there for 10 minutes. Maybe 15 at most. I'd listened to 3 songs on the radio, checked my emails, scrolled through messages. That didn't take 6 hours. The fog was still dense, maybe thicker than before. I turned on my high beams, useless, just glare reflecting back. I crept forward slowly, trying to find the exit from the lookout back to the highway. My headlights caught a shape in the fog. Another car, parked nose into the guardrail, a silver Honda Accord, newer model. I pulled up beside it and lowered my window. Hello? Anyone there? No response. I got out, approached the Honda. Empty. Keys in the ignition. Turned to on position. Purse on the passenger seat. Phone plugged into the charger. Screen showing 9:53 p.m. Whoever owned this car had left recently or was still nearby. Hello? I called into the fog. Is anyone here? My voice died instantly, absorbed by the murk. I walked toward where I remembered the guardrail being, found it by touch more than sight, and looked over toward the lake. The fog was glowing. Not from any external light source, it was generating its own illumination, a pale blue phosphorescence that pulsed rhythmically, like breathing. And within the glow, I saw shapes moving, not people too large for people, wrong proportions, bodies that seemed to shift and reform as they moved. I backed away from the guardrail quickly, returning to my car. As I walked, I noticed more vehicles, at least 7 now, all parked in various positions around the lookout. All appeared recently abandoned. All were empty. I got in my car and locked the doors, then immediately felt stupid. What was I locking out? Fog? But the fog was pressing against my windows now, and I could see shapes within it, faces that formed and dissolved, hands that pressed against the glass, leaving no prints. I started the engine and shifted into reverse, backing up carefully. My backup camera showed nothing but white static. I used my mirrors, turning my head constantly, and I felt the rear tires bump over something, probably the parking curb. Then I was moving forward, creeping through the fog, trying to find the exit road. My GPS was frozen, useless. The compass on my dashboard was spinning wildly, unable to find north. My headlights caught a sign, "Welcome to Bala. Please drive carefully." That was wrong. Impossibly wrong. Bala was 30 kilometers north of where I'd stopped. There was no possible way I'd driven there without knowing no way to cover that distance in fog this thick. The fog thinned slightly as I entered the town, and I could make out buildings on both sides of the road. Bala was a small community, maybe 1,000 year-round residents, quiet in the winter months. But as I drove down the main street, I realized everything was wrong. The buildings were there, but they were in different positions. The grocery store I'd passed dozens of times was on the wrong side of the street. The marina was facing the wrong direction. The town hall was a different architecture, older, Victorian style, instead of the modern brick building I knew, and the signs were dated. Not old signs dated, as in showing past dates. Bala Summer Festival, July 15 to 171987. Town Council Election, October 4th, 1991. Welcome Winter Carnival participants, February 2 to 4, 2003. I was driving through Bala's history, or through multiple versions of Bala from different time periods, all overlaid in the same physical space. My car stalled at the town center, just died, despite showing a quarter tank of gas and a healthy battery. I tried restarting, nothing. The dashboard lights flickered and went dark. Through my windshield, I watched the town shift. Buildings would solidify for a few seconds, then become translucent, then be replaced by different buildings. The grocery store became a general store, became a trading post, became empty land. The marina appeared and disappeared, boats coming and going like a time lapse. People started appearing in the street. They walked through the town center, going about their business, dressed in clothing from various eras. A woman in 1980s fashion pushed a baby carriage through a man in Victorian formal wear. A group of teenagers in 1990s grunge walked through a horse-drawn carriage from the early 20th century. None of them acknowledged each other. None of them seemed aware they were sharing space with people from different time periods, and none of them saw me. I watched a man walk directly toward my car. He'd pass right through the hood if he kept his trajectory. He did. He walked through the front of my car, through the engine block, through the dashboard, through me, and out the back seat. He was a ghost, or I was a ghost, or we were both ghosts, existing in different temporal layers. A face appeared at my driver's side window. A woman, 30s, modern clothing, very much aware of me. "You got caught in the fog too?" she asked, her voice muffled by the glass but comprehensible. I lowered the window. It still worked manually, even with the electrical system dead. "Yes, at the lookout. I stopped to check my tire, and time skipped," she finished. "Yeah, same thing happened to me. I stopped to take a photo of the lake at sunset, and when I checked my phone, it was morning, except it wasn't really morning. The sun was in the wrong position. And then the fog came. "How long have you been here?" I asked. 3 days, I think. Hard to tell. Time doesn't work right. Sometimes it's day, sometimes it's night, but it doesn't follow a pattern. And the town keeps changing different versions, different years, all mixed together. "Have you tried walking out, following the highway?" She laughed bitterly. "Tried that first day. Walked for what felt like hours on Highway 169 North. Ended up back at the lookout where I started. Tried going south, same result. Every road leads back to the center of town. We're in a loop. There are 8 of us that I've found. People who stopped at the lookout and got caught in the fog. The earliest guy has been here for 6 weeks. He's not doing well, starting to fade." "Fade?" She stepped back from the car and gestured to herself. "Look closely." I did, and I saw what she meant. She was slightly translucent, her edges blurred, like an out-of-focus photograph. Not dramatically so, but noticeable once I looked for it. "The longer you stay, the less solid you become," she explained. "We think we're becoming like the other people here, the historical ones, the echoes from different time periods. Eventually, we'll just be another layer of Bala's past, walking through town forever, unaware we're trapped. There has to be a way out, I said. The fog came from the lake. Maybe we go to the water. The lake is worse, trust me. 2 of our group tried. We found them on the shore 3 hours later, aged 50 years in 3 hours. White hair, wrinkled skin, barely able to move. They died that night. Whatever's in the lake, it accelerates time differently. I got out of the car, and she introduced herself as Patricia Chen, a graphic designer from Toronto who'd been driving to a cottage rental when she stopped for a photo. We walked to where the other trapped people had gathered, a diner that existed in multiple time periods simultaneously. Sometimes a 1950s soda fountain, sometimes an 80s truck stop, sometimes a contemporary coffee shop. The others were there. 5 men, 2 women besides Patricia, all showing various degrees of translucency. The man who'd been trapped longest, Roger, a retiree from Sudbury, was barely visible, his form flickering like a dying light bulb. New arrival, Patricia announced. David, meet the lost people of Bala. They told their stories, variations on the same theme. Stopped at the lookout. Time skipped. Fog appeared. Town became a temporal jumble. All exits led back to the center. They'd tried everything, walking out, driving out, waiting for the fog to clear, attempting to flag down other vehicles. Nothing worked. We're in a time fold, Roger said, his voice weak and distant. I did my PhD in theoretical physics before I retired. What's happening here is consistent with a closed time-like curve, a loop in space-time where cause and effect become circular. The fog is the boundary condition, and the town is the trapped region. In English? I asked. We're in a bubble outside normal time. The lookout is the entry point, Bala is the trap, and the lake is something worse. The fog appeared November 1st, 2022. That's when I got caught. It's been growing, catching more people. Eventually, it'll expand beyond this area. How do we stop it? I asked. Roger's flickering form laughed sadly. Stop it? We can't even escape it. In a few more days, I'll fade completely, become another echo walking these streets. Then the rest of you will follow, one by one. No, I said firmly. There's always a solution. Every system has a vulnerability. I spent the next several hours, though time had become meaningless, exploring Bala systematically. I mapped the town's geography across its various temporal layers, looking for constants. Most buildings changed, most streets reconfigured, but a few elements remained stable across all time periods. The old church at the edge of town never changed. Same Victorian structure, same position, same architecture no matter what era the rest of town displayed. The war memorial in the center square stayed constant. Names were added over the years, but the monument itself was always there. And the bridge over the Muskoka River, the one element that connected the town to the larger road network, always existed in the same location, though its style changed from wooden to steel to modern concrete across different periods. The bridge was the key. I gathered the group and shared my theory. The bridge is the only structure that spans the boundary between Bala and the outside world. It's present in all time periods. Maybe it's also present in normal time, outside the fold. We've tried crossing the bridge, Patricia said. It just loops back to town. During daytime, I countered, when the temporal layers are most active, most jumbled. Traditional boundary time between summer and winter, between life and death. These folds often have temporal weak points at boundaries. So we wait for what? Midnight? Dawn? The moment between time periods, Roger said, understanding. 3 a.m. isn't just a superstition. It's the furthest point from both midnight and dawn, the time when one day has truly ended and the next hasn't really begun. The witching hour, the dead hour. If the fold has a weak point, it'll be then. We waited, watched the town cycle through its various iterations, watched Roger fade further, his form now barely a shimmer in the air. Watched ourselves become more translucent hour by hour. At 2:55 a.m., according to multiple watches, though we couldn't trust time here, we gathered at the bridge, all 8 of us, holding hands to maintain physical connection, with Roger's barely present form at the center. The fog was thick here, the lake's phosphorescent glow visible beneath the bridge. The water's surface wasn't water anymore. It was moving time itself, flowing and eddying, past and present and future, all mixed together. At 2:59 a.m., Roger began to speak. Not words, mathematical formulas, quantum equations, descriptions of space-time geometry that I didn't understand. But the other survivors felt it too. The air was changing, becoming thinner, less resistant. The temporal layers were separating slightly, creating tiny gaps. At 3 a.m. exactly, Roger screamed. Not in pain and effort, in defiance. His fading form suddenly brightened, became solid for the first time in days, and I realized he was using himself as an anchor, pulling the separate time streams into alignment through force of will and understanding. "Run!" he shouted. "Across the bridge! Now!" We ran. All 7 of us still solid enough to move, sprinting across the bridge while Roger held the temporal layers stable. Behind us, I heard the fog screaming an actual sound, high-pitched and furious. As we escaped its trap, the bridge seemed to stretch forever, hundreds of meters long, though it should only be 50. The wooden planks turned to steel grillwork, turned to concrete under our feet as we crossed through time periods. The town behind us was cycling faster now, decades passing per second, buildings rising and falling like breath. Then we were off the bridge, on solid highway 169, and the fog cut off abruptly at the bridge's far end. We'd crossed the boundary. I looked back. Roger was still on the bridge, holding both ends of the temporal fold, keeping it open for us to escape. He was completely solid now, more real than he'd been in weeks, but I could see the effort was consuming him. "Roger!" Patricia shouted. "Come on!" He smiled and shook his head. "Someone has to close it from inside. Otherwise, it'll just spread. The fold needs to be collapsed, sealed. I'm the only one who understands the mathematics." "You'll die." "I'm already dead. I faded too far even out there. I'd just be a ghost. But I can do this. I can end it." He raised his hands, and the bridge began to collapse. Not physically, temporally. The separate time periods were merging, crushing together, and Roger stood at the center point, forcing the fold to consume itself. The fog screamed again, and shapes emerged from it, those things I'd seen at the lookout, the entities that lived in the temporal murk. They rushed toward Roger, trying to stop him, but Roger stood firm, his equations creating a barrier they couldn't cross, and as we watched from the safe side of the bridge, he compressed decades of Bala's history into a single moment, then collapsed that moment into nothing. The bridge vanished. The fog vanished. The glowing lake vanished. In their place was just normal November darkness and a peaceful Muskoka town sleeping under winter stars. Roger vanished with it, sacrificing himself to close the fold from inside. We stood on highway 169 inches, the 3 a.m. darkness, 7 survivors of a trap that no longer existed. Our cars were still at the lookout, kilometers back, but we were free. We were solid again. We'd escaped. The OPP found us walking south on the highway an hour later, looking for our vehicles. We told them we'd been in an accident, gotten confused in the fog, gotten separated from our cars. They believed us because the alternative was impossible. But I know what happened. I know Roger Chen, Patricia's uncle, we discovered later, though they'd never met in the fog, gave his life to save ours. I know there was a temporal fold that trapped 8 people for days or weeks in a town that existed in all time simultaneously. The lookout is still there on Highway 169. The town of Bala still exists, but I've driven that route twice since November, and both times I didn't stop at the lookout, just drove past, eyes forward, refusing to even glance at the lake, because sometimes, late at night, when fog rolls in, I see a shimmer at that spot, a translucence in the air. The temporal fold, trying to reform, kept sealed only by Roger's sacrifice and mathematics that even death couldn't erase. And I wonder how long his equations will hold, how long before the fog returns, how long before another driver stops to check a tire and loses 6 hours and falls through time into a trap that never truly closes. I don't stop at lookouts anymore. Don't stop for views. Don't stop unless absolutely necessary. Because 30 seconds can become 6 hours. 6 hours can become 6 days. And 6 days can become forever, walking through a town that exists in all times and none, fading slowly into history itself. Some rest areas aren't resting places. They're traps with beautiful views, and the fog is always waiting. The memorial flowers appeared on the median at 3:17 p.m., exactly 12 hours before the accident that would kill the person they commemorated. I'm Officer Thomas Kowalski, 15 years with Niagara Regional Police, Traffic Division. I've worked fatal accidents on the QEW between Burlington and Fort Erie for over a decade. I know every memorial site, every ghost bike, every cluster of flowers marking where someone died on that stretch of highway. On June 4th, 2023, I saw flowers that shouldn't exist yet. I was westbound on the QEW near Street Catharines, routine patrol on a clear summer afternoon, when I spotted the memorial on the median between the eastbound and westbound lanes. Fresh flowers, roses, lilies, carnations attached to the guardrail with a white wooden cross. A photo was taped to the cross, a young woman, early 20s, with a bright smile, standard memorial setup. Except I'd driven this exact stretch 3 hours earlier, and the flowers hadn't been there. More importantly, I checked collision reports every morning. There hadn't been a fatal accident at this location recently. I pulled onto the shoulder, activated my lights, and crossed carefully to the median. The flowers were very fresh, dew still on the petals. The photo showed a woman I didn't recognize, not someone from any recent accident report. The cross had a name and date: Sarah Brennan, the 4th of June, 2023. Always loved, never forgotten. Today's date. Not today's date as in she died on this date years ago. Today's date as in June 4th, 2023 today. Right now, the day I was standing there reading it. But no, Sarah Brennan had died today. I would know I'd started my shift at 7 a.m., and there'd been no fatals reported anywhere in the region. I photographed the memorial and called it in to dispatch. They confirmed no accidents involving a Sarah Brennan, no missing persons, no reports that matched. I carefully removed the photo from the cross, intending to investigate further. As I held the photo, it changed. The image shifted like a live video. The woman's smile faded. Her face turned toward something off camera, expression changing from joy to concern to fear. Then the photo went white, as if exposed to sudden bright light, and when the glare faded, it showed the aftermath of a collision: crumpled metal, broken glass, airbags deployed. I dropped the photo, and it fluttered to the pavement, showing its original image again. Young woman, bright smile, no indication of trauma. My hands were shaking as I picked it up. The image stayed stable now, but I knew what I'd seen. This memorial wasn't marking a death that had happened. It was marking a death that would happen. I returned to my cruiser and ran the name through every database I could access. Sarah Brennan, age 23, address in Street Catharines, clean record, no warrants, no flags, current vehicle registration, a blue Honda Civic. I pulled her driver's license photo, exact match to the memorial picture. She was alive. Right now, somewhere in the Niagara region, Sarah Brennan was alive and had no idea her memorial was already on the QEW median. I called her number, no answer. Straight to voicemail. I sent a patrol car to her address. She wasn't home. I checked her social media. Last post was from 2 hours ago. Road trip to Toronto. Beautiful day for a drive. She was on the highway, maybe on the QEW right now, driving toward a death that her own memorial said was inevitable. I started eastbound, lights and sirens, searching for a blue Honda Civic with Sarah Brennan behind the wheel. The QEW was busy with afternoon traffic, dozens of blue cars, and I couldn't stop them all. I called for assistance, every available unit to look for her vehicle. Find her, stop her, get her off the highway, by any means necessary. At 4:05 p.m., I passed the memorial again. The flowers were wilting. Not slowly, not naturally, but rapidly, visibly. Petals browning and falling as I watched. The memorial was counting down to something. 4:30 p.m. I spotted a blue Honda Civic, correct plates, Street Catharines registration. I pasted in the left lane, trying to see the driver. Young woman, dark hair, matched Sarah's description. I activated my lights, signaling her to pull over. She didn't. Not in a fleeing way, she just didn't seem to see my lights. She continued at exactly 120 kilometers per hour, eyes forward, driving with mechanical precision. I pulled alongside her, using my PA system. "Blue Honda, pull over to the shoulder immediately." No reaction. She didn't turn her head, didn't acknowledge my presence. Her face was blank, expressionless, and her hands gripped the wheel at 10 and 2 like a student driver following instructions. I tried to get ahead of her to force a stop, but as I accelerated, her Honda matched my speed exactly. I hit 140. She hit 140. I tried to drop back and box her in, but other traffic seemed to flow around her car like water around a stone, preventing me from getting close. 5:15 p.m. I passed the memorial again. The flowers were completely dead now, brown and withered. The photo was fading, Sarah's image becoming ghostly and pale. I called for a roadblock set up at the next interchange, stop her by force if necessary. But as units moved into position, I realized the pattern. She was heading toward the exact location of her memorial, kilometer marker 473, near Street, Catherine's, where the flowers marked her death. She would reach that spot at 3:17 a.m. 12 hours after the memorial had appeared. I tried everything. I pulled alongside her with my window down, shouting. I tried to nudge her car toward the shoulder with a PIT maneuver. I even considered shooting her tires, anything to stop her from reaching that spot at that time. Nothing worked. Her car was untouchable, existing slightly out of phase with normal traffic. Other vehicles avoided her unconsciously, and my cruiser couldn't make solid contact every time I tried to push her car. Mine would slide off like repelling magnets. 6 p.m. She pulled into a rest stop. Finally, a chance. She moved with that same mechanical precision, and when I stepped in front of her, she walked through me. Not around, through, like I wasn't there. I tried to grab her arm, my hand passed through her shoulder. She was already a ghost, or not quite here, or existing more in the future where she was dead than in the present where she was alive. She used the restroom, bought coffee, returned to her car, and resumed driving, all in perfect routine, following a script that had already been written. She got back on the QEW, continued toward Toronto, and I followed helplessly. 9 p.m. The memorial was glowing now, faint blue light emanating from the dead flowers. I'd passed it 6 times during the day, and each time it had changed flowers wilting, photo fading, and now light emerging, a beacon marking the location of future death. I stayed with Sarah's car as night fell, watching her drive with unwavering focus. She never checked her phone, never adjusted the radio, never showed any sign of being a real person. She was a recording playing out, and I was watching the playback of events that had already been determined. Midnight, 3 hours left. I called my supervisor, explained everything, requested permission to create a major roadblock, shut down the entire QEW if necessary, to stop her from reaching that spot. Permission denied. The story was too insane, too impossible. I was ordered to return to station for psychological evaluation. I ignored the order. 2 a.m. I was running on empty, fuel gauge showing a quarter tank. I pulled into a service center to refuel, and Sarah's Honda passed by, still maintaining 120. When I merged back onto the highway 30 seconds later, she was gone. I raced forward, searching, and found her exactly where she should be, according to my prediction. 10 kilometers from marker 473, arriving at the memorial site at precisely 3:17 a.m., 3:10 a.m. I was ahead of her now, parked on the shoulder at the memorial site. The dead flowers were blazing with blue light, and the photo had become a video screen showing the same crash sequence repeatedly. Impact, explosion of airbags, glass shattering, then reset and replay. Sarah's Honda appeared in my rearview mirror, approaching at 120. I pulled my cruiser onto the highway, blocking the right lane where she was traveling. She'd have to go around or stop. Either option would change her trajectory, change the timing, potentially change the outcome. Her car didn't slow. 3:16 a.m., closing fast. I braced for impact, certain she'd plow into my cruiser, and maybe that was the answer. Let her hit me. Instead of whatever was waiting at marker 473, trade my life for hers, change the future the memorial predicted. At 3:16 and 45 seconds, her Honda passed through my cruiser, passed through, like both vehicles were ghosts to each other, occupying the same space without interacting. I felt nothing, saw her car emerge from my passenger side and continue forward. She reached marker 473 at 3:17 a.m. exactly. The transport truck appeared from nowhere. It didn't merge from another lane or emerge from an on-ramp. It simply materialized in the space Sarah's car occupied, as if both vehicles were always destined to share that exact coordinate at that exact moment. The collision was instantaneous and catastrophic. The Honda crumpled like paper. The transport, I couldn't see a driver, couldn't see any identifying marks, didn't slow or react. It continued eastbound for 50 meters, then vanished as completely as it had appeared. I was out of my cruiser immediately, running to the wreckage. Sarah's Honda was destroyed, compacted to half its length. The driver's door wouldn't open. I smashed the window, reached inside. Sarah Brennan was alive. Impossible, but alive. Unconscious, bleeding, seriously injured, but breathing. I called for EMS and fire rescue, applied pressure to wounds, talked to her even though she couldn't hear me, told her to hold on, told her she was going to make it. The ambulance arrived in 8 minutes. They extracted her with jaws of life, stabilized her, transported Code 3 to St. Catherine's Hospital. I followed, lights and sirens, and I was there when they wheeled her into surgery. 4 hours later, a doctor emerged. She's critical but stable. Multiple fractures, internal bleeding, but she's alive. Another few minutes without medical attention, she wouldn't have made it. I sat in the waiting room until Sarah regained consciousness that afternoon. When she was stable enough to talk, I visited her room. Officer Kowalski, I introduced myself. I'm the one who found you after the accident. She looked at me with confused eyes. Accident? I don't remember an accident. I was driving to Toronto, and then I was here. Do you remember anything about the drive? Anything unusual? She thought for a long moment. I remember getting on the QEW around 4 p.m., then nothing until waking up here. Did I fall asleep? Did I hit someone? You were hit by a transport truck at 3:17 a.m. You don't remember 9 hours of driving? Her face went pale. That's impossible. I would remember. 9 hours. That's not something you forget. But she had forgotten, or never consciously experienced it, because she'd been driving already dead, following the script her memorial had written 12 hours before the accident. I showed her the photo I'd taken of the memorial, the cross, the flowers, her picture, the date. She stared at it for a long time. This was there before I crashed, 12 hours before. So someone knew. Someone put up a memorial for me before I died. How is that possible? I had no answer. I still don't. The memorial was gone when I returned to marker 473. No flowers, no cross, no photo. The guardrail was damaged from the collision but showed no evidence a memorial had ever been attached. Sarah Brennan survived. She spent 3 weeks in hospital, 2 months in rehabilitation, and she recovered almost fully. She doesn't drive anymore, can't bring herself to get behind a wheel. She lives in St. Catherine's still, but she refused to talk to me after that initial hospital conversation. I think she knows something she won't tell me. Something she saw or experienced during those missing 9 hours. Something that explains why her memorial appeared before her death. I've patrolled the QEW for 2 months since that night, and I've seen 6 more premature memorials. Each one appears exactly 12 hours before a fatal accident at that location. Fresh flowers marking deaths that haven't happened yet. Photos showing people who are still alive, still driving, still making their way toward predetermined coordinates where they'll meet transport trucks or concrete barriers or other vehicles in collisions that feel scripted, inevitable. I try to stop them. I've saved 2, got them off the highway before their appointed time, before the script could play out. 4 others I couldn't reach in time. They died exactly as their memorials predicted, exactly 12 hours after the flowers appeared. The department thinks I'm losing it. Stress, PTSD, burnout. They've suggested leave, counseling, retirement. They don't believe the memorials are real, don't believe they appear before the accidents. But I've started documenting everything. Photographs, timestamps, witness statements, building a case file that proves the QEW is haunted by future deaths, that some force or entity or glitch in causality is marking collision sites before the collisions happen. Why? I don't know. Warning? Prophecy? Or something crueler letting people see their deaths coming but being powerless to prevent them? Sarah was the only one who survived her predetermined death. Every other person who's had a memorial appear has died exactly when the flowers predicted. She's the exception, the variable that broke the pattern. I asked her once, through a mutual friend, since she won't talk to me directly. Her answer came back secondhand. I didn't survive. I died at 3:17 a.m. on June 4th, at kilometer marker 473. A living memorial. I died, and the flowers brought back something that looks like me, talks like me, but knows it already ended. I don't know if that's true, or if she's dealing with survivor's guilt in a disturbing way, but I think about it every time I patrol the QEW, every time I check the medians for flowers that shouldn't be there yet, and I think about my own mortality, about whether someday I'll pass a memorial with my own photo, my own name, my own death date from 12 hours in the future, whether I'll try to stop it, or whether I'll be like Sarah, driving unconsciously toward the coordinates where I'm destined to end. The QEW runs from Toronto to Fort Erie, 400 kilometers of highway that thousands of people drive every day. Normal highway, normal accidents, normal tragedies, except the memorials know before we do. The flowers mark the graves before the bodies arrive. And somewhere on that highway, right now, tomorrow's dead are already being commemorated. Their memorials are blooming in the present. Their accidents are waiting 12 hours in the future. And I'm patrolling the timeline between, trying to save people who are already dead, trying to prevent accidents that have already been written into the fabric of the highway itself. Some days I succeed. Most days I just watch the memorials prove themselves correct. And I wonder when mine will appear, when I'll drive past marker 4, 73, or 218 or 592 and see my own face, smiling from a photo taped to a white wooden cross. When I'll have 12 hours to try to outrun a death that's already commemorated. When I'll discover if I'm like Sarah, the exception who survives only to become a living memorial, or if I'll be like the others, who die exactly on schedule, proving the flowers never lie. The QEW is 394 kilometers long. Somewhere on that stretch, my memorial is waiting to bloom. I just haven't reached it yet. The dashcam footage showed me dying 7 different ways before I made it through the Thunder Bay bypass. I'm Marcus Webb, 34 years old. Independent courier driving contract runs across northern Ontario. On October 19th, 2023, I installed a new dashcam in my van, a high-end model with AI features, collision prediction, lane departure warnings, the works. $250 to potentially save my life, or at least my insurance rates. The installation was straightforward, hardwired to my vehicle's electrical system, memory card, with 200 hours of recording capacity. I tested it before leaving Thunder Bay for a run to Salt Sweet. Marie watched the display show me a clear view through my windshield, with timestamp and GPS coordinates overlaid. Working perfectly, I pulled out of the Tim Hortons parking lot at 6:15 a.m. and merged onto Highway 17 heading west. The dashcam recorded everything normally for the first 20 minutes. Uneventful driving through pre-dawn darkness. Occasional transport truck passing the other direction. Nothing noteworthy. Then at kilometer marker 243, the display glitched. The image split. The left side showed my current view through the windshield. The right side showed the same view, but from slightly in the future. I could tell because the truck that was 50 meters ahead in the left side image was right in front of me in the right side image. I blinked, looked at the screen again. The split was gone. Normal display restored. Firmware bug, I muttered. New technology, bound to have issues. 10 minutes later, it happened again. But this time the right side image didn't show the future, it showed an accident. My van, Same view through the windshield, but the road was coming up too fast. I was losing control. The vehicle was spinning, and there was an impact. The image went black. The left side continued showing my current, uneventful drive. My hands tightened on the wheel. That was unsettling, but obviously a glitch. Some error in the AI's collision prediction software, creating false scenarios. Then I hit the curve at kilometer marker 268, the exact curve I'd seen in the dashcam glitch. And for a half second, I felt the road was suddenly icier than it should be. My tires were losing grip. The van was starting to spin. I corrected instinctively, eased off the gas, straightened out. The momentary slip passed, and I continued safely through the curve. In my peripheral vision, the dashcam display split again. The left side showed me driving normally through the curve, continuing west. The right side showed the accident, my van spinning, hitting the shoulder, rolling, coming to rest on its side in the ditch. Then the split merged, and both sides showed my current, safe trajectory. The dashcam wasn't predicting a possible collision. It was showing me a collision that had happened in an alternate timeline, a version of events where I didn't correct quickly enough. I pulled over at the next rest area, heart pounding, and reviewed the footage. The memory card showed only one continuous recording, my uneventful drive. No glitches, no split screen, no accident footage. Whatever I was seeing on the live display wasn't being recorded, or it was being recorded somewhere else, in some other version of the drive. I considered turning around, driving back to Thunder Bay, getting the dashcam removed. But I had a contract delivery, and I was already running tight on schedule. I'd continue to Salt Sweet, Marie, then deal with the malfunctioning equipment. I merged back onto Highway 17, watching the display carefully. The splits started happening more frequently. Every few minutes, the screen would divide, showing me two versions of my drive. The left side always showed what was actually happening. The right side showed variations, sometimes minor, may changing lanes slightly earlier or later, sometimes catastrophic collisions, spinouts, impacts with wildlife or other vehicles. At kilometer marker 312, a moose emerged from the tree line on the right side of the screen. I watched my dashcam show me two scenarios simultaneously. Left side, I braked, and the moose crossed safely ahead of me. Right side, I didn't brake fast enough. Hit the moose at 90 kilometers per hour. The animal came through my windshield, and the footage ended with antlers and shattered glass filling my view. In reality, I was already braking. No moose had appeared yet. But 3 seconds later, it did, crossing exactly where the dashcam had predicted, and I stopped in time because I'd already been warned. The dashcam wasn't just showing possible futures, it was showing actual futures from parallel timelines, and somehow my timeline was the one where I kept making the right decisions to avoid the accidents. Or horrible thought, maybe my timeline was just one of many, and in other timelines, other versions of me were dying in all the ways the right side of the screen kept showing. By the time I reached the Nipigon area, I'd seen myself die 7 times. Death 1, spin out on the curve, avoided. Death 2, moose collision, avoided. Death 3, head on with a transport truck that drifted into my lane, avoided by swerving at the last second. Death 4, brake failure, on a steep decline, avoided by using emergency brake. Death 5, falling asleep at the wheel and drifting off the road, avoided by stopping for coffee. Death 6, rear-ended by a speeding vehicle while stopped at a construction zone, avoided by seeing it coming in my mirror and pulling forward. Death 7, cargo shift, causing the van to become unbalanced and roll, avoided by securing my load properly before leaving. 7 deaths that didn't happen in my timeline, but were happening in the alternate versions the dashcam somehow received transmissions from. The display was splitting constantly now, less time showing single images and more time showing dual timelines. I'd glance at the screen and see myself succeeding on the left, dying on the right, succeeding left, dying right. Over and over, a constant stream of Marcus survives versus Marcus dies. I was sweating through my shirt despite the October cold. My hands ached from gripping the wheel. Every few minutes brought a new life or death decision, and only the dash cam's preview kept me making the right choices. Then, at kilometer marker 493, the display went black, both sides, completely dark. Not powered off, I could see the timestamp and GPS still updating, but the video feed was gone. Just empty black on both sides of the split screen. I was driving blind, or rather, driving with only my actual eyes and not the dash cam's future-predicting vision. Vulnerable again. The screen stayed black for 5 minutes. 5 agonizing minutes where every curve, every vehicle, every shadow could be the death I wouldn't see coming. Then the display came back, and I immediately regretted wanting it to. The split was different now. The left side still showed my current view, but the right side was showing multiple images simultaneously, 4, then 6, then 9 smaller windows, all showing different versions of my drive, different timelines, all playing out at once. In one window, I was stopped at a traffic light in a town I hadn't reached yet. In another, I was in a collision with a deer. In a third, I was pulled over by OPP. In a fourth, my van was on fire. In a fifth, I was driving in heavy snow that hadn't started falling in my timeline. In a sixth, the road I was on didn't exist, just empty forest where Highway 17 should be. 9 timelines, 9 different Marcus Webbs, experiencing 9 different versions of the same drive. And in the center of those 9 windows, a 10th image appeared. Text, white letters on black background. Which one are you? I nearly drove off the road. The text stayed on screen for 3 seconds, then was replaced by more text. You are experiencing Timeline Alpha. 8 beta timelines exist simultaneously. 7. Terminate before destination. 1 reaches Salt Stay. Marie. This dashcam receives transmissions from all timelines. You have been viewing your beta deaths. Warning. Timeline convergence. In 47 kilometers. Multiple versions will merge. Only one Marcus Webb continues. The text disappeared, replaced by the 9 timeline windows again. I could see them more clearly now in 5 of the timelines. I was dead or dying. Van in ditch, van on fire, van crushed by fallen tree, van submerged in water. How? Van simply empty and abandoned on the roadside. In 3 timelines, I was alive but struggling. Severe weather, mechanical failure, pulled over with what looked like a serious injury. In the 9th timeline, the one I assumed was my own, I was driving normally, heading west on clear roads. But according to the text, 8 of these timelines would terminate. 8 versions of Marcus Webb would cease to exist. Only one would continue to Salt Sweet Marie. 47 kilometers to convergence. I didn't know what convergence meant. Would the timelines literally merge? Would 8 versions of me suddenly occupy the same space? Would the universe somehow choose which Marcus was real and delete the others? I kept driving, because stopping seemed more dangerous than continuing. The 9 windows continued showing their different realities, and I watched myself die repeatedly in the beta timelines. Beta 3, Marcus hit black ice and went into the lake. Watched him claw uselessly at the window. His timeline ended. Beta 7, Marcus had a seizure, something I'd never experienced, but apparently in his timeline I had a previously undiagnosed condition. His van crossed the center line and hit a transport head-on. Timeline ended. Beta 2, Marcus's cargo included something flammable that ignited. His van became an inferno. Timeline ended. One by one, the beta timelines terminated until only 3 remained. Alpha, mine, Beta 4, and Beta 6. In Beta 4, Marcus was driving in a blizzard, visibility near 0, barely making progress. In Beta 6, Marcus had been pulled over by OPP and was being arrested for something. I couldn't tell what, but he was in handcuffs. 20 kilometers to convergence. The text returned. Timeline Beta 4 will terminate in 8 kilometers. Blizzard conditions cause fatal collision. I watched it happen in real time. Beta 4, Marcus driving through snow, visibility dropping to 0, and then the transport truck jackknifed across the highway ahead, and he had no time to stop. The impact was catastrophic. Timeline ended. 2 timelines left. Alpha and Beta 6. Timeline Beta 6 continues. Arrest results in 72-hour detention. Delivery missed. Contract terminated. Financial consequences severe. Timeline functionally equivalent to termination. So Beta 6 Marcus survived but lost his livelihood. The timeline continued, but the Marcus in it was effectively ended. 10 kilometers to convergence. The text appeared again. Timeline Alpha is optimal. You must remain in Alpha. Convergence will create decision point. Choose correctly. How? I shouted at the dashcam. How do I choose? What's the decision? You will know. The choice is binary. Left or right. 5 kilometers. The road ahead was empty. Straight. No obvious decision points. No intersections. No turns. No reason to choose left or right. 3 kilometers. I could see Beta 6 Marcus on the screen, sitting in the back of an OPP cruiser, his face defeated. That timeline was still running, but he'd lost. Even if he survived physically, his life was effectively over. 1 kilometer. The road split ahead, not on any map, not marked by any signs, but suddenly there were 2 highway, 17 seconds, diverging left and right around a massive granite outcrop that hadn't existed a second ago. The dashcam display showed both routes. Left path. Clear road. Continuing west. Right path. The exact same. A perfect mirror. No visible difference. No way to determine which was correct. Then I saw the detail. On the right path, there was an OPP cruiser parked on the shoulder about 500 meters ahead. On the left path, the road was empty. Beta 6 had been pulled over. Beta 6's timeline continued, but was functionally ended. I chose left. The van followed the left fork around the granite outcrop, and I felt a sensation like passing through a membrane. A brief resistance and then release. In my rearview mirror, the right fork was gone. The road was just normal. Highway 17 again. No split, no granite outcrop, no choice point. The dashcam display returned to normal. Single image, no split screen, no timeline windows. Just my current view, driving west toward Sault Ste. Marie. The text appeared one final time. Convergence complete. Timeline Alpha preserved. 7 beta versions terminated. 1 beta version continues in parallel. You are Prime Marcus. Delivery will succeed. Then the display went completely normal, and for the remaining 200 kilometers to Sault Ste. Marie, the dashcam functioned exactly as advertised, recording my drive. No glitches, no split screens, no messages from parallel timelines. I made the delivery on time. I drove back to Thunder Bay the next day. The return trip was completely uneventful, the dashcam showing only single timeline footage. I tried to review the outbound journey on the memory card, hoping to find evidence of what I'd experienced. The footage showed only normal driving, no splits, no timeline windows, no text messages. 8 hours of unremarkable video, but I knew what I'd seen. I knew that somewhere in parallel timelines, 7 versions of Marcus Webb had died on Highway 17 on October 19, 2023. Spinout, moose collision, head-on, brake failure, drowning, fire, blizzard collision, and I knew that in another timeline, a version of me was sitting in a jail cell, his courier career destroyed by whatever traffic violation or cargo issue had led to his arrest. 8 Marcus Webbs ended. 1 survived and succeeded. I am Prime Marcus. The convergence chose my timeline as the one that continues, but I think about the others constantly. Were they real? Did they have consciousness, experience their deaths, feel the pain, or were they just probability shadows, potential versions that never achieved full reality? I still have the dashcam installed. I've driven 20 more runs since October, and it functions normally, no glitches, no timeline splits, no messages, except sometimes, late at night on empty highways, the display will flicker for a fraction of a second. Too quick to see clearly, but in that flicker, I catch glimpses. Other roads, other vehicles, other versions of my drive happening in parallel. The dashcam isn't malfunctioning. It's working exactly as designed, by some designer who understands that reality isn't singular. It's receiving transmissions from the multiverse, showing me the countless versions of every journey where different choices lead to different outcomes. Most timelines terminate. Most versions of us die in accidents or failures we never know about because we're living in the timelines that survived. I am Prime Marcus because I made the right choices on October 19th, or because random chance favored my timeline, or because some force decided my timeline was optimal and helped me navigate the convergence. I don't know which. I just know that every time I drive, I'm aware that other versions of me are driving too, in timelines adjacent to mine, making different choices, experiencing different outcomes. Some of them are dying right now. Some of them are in jail, or injured, or lost, and one of them is me, driving Highway 17, believing he's the only Marcus Webb, unaware that he's just the one whose timeline happened to continue. The dash cam has shown me the truth. We are all living in the timeline that survived, surrounded by ghost timelines where we didn't make it. Every safe arrival is a minor miracle. Every uneventful drive is a victory over countless parallel deaths. And somewhere in the multiverse, on an infinite number of Highway 17 seconds, infinite versions of every driver are experiencing every possible outcome simultaneously. The dashcam just lets me see what most people never know. How many times we die before we make it home. How many versions of ourselves terminate before the convergence chooses which one is real. I am Prime Marcus. For now. Until the next convergence. Until the next choice point where I have to choose left or right, and 8 more versions of me terminate so one can continue. The dashcam is always watching, always receiving transmissions from the timelines that branch off with every decision, and I'm always driving, always choosing, always wondering if I'll still be Prime Marcus when I reach my destination, or if this timeline will terminate, and another Marcus will continue, unaware that I existed, unaware that he's driving over the ghost of a timeline where I failed to choose correctly. The footage never shows the splits, but I see them every time I drive, and I know the truth. Every highway is infinite. Every journey multiplies into countless versions, and we only experience the timeline where we survived. The others just end, and we never know how many times we died today. The radio station played songs from the year I'd die. I'm Rebecca Hart, 46 years old, real estate agent specializing in cottage properties across the Kawarthas. On September 8, 2023, I was driving Highway 28 north of Peterborough to show a waterfront property near Burleigh Falls. My car radio had been malfunctioning for weeks, stations drifting, static, occasional complete silence, but I'd been too busy to get it fixed. As I passed through Buckhorn, the radio static cleared suddenly, and a station came through perfectly. CKFM 94.3. Your hits from the future. Strange tagline. I'd never heard of a station using future in their branding. Usually it's yesterday's favorites, or classic hits, or something nostalgic. The song playing was nothing I recognized. Electronic pop, catchy melody, professional production, but completely unfamiliar. The vocalist's style was contemporary but not current, hard to explain, but it felt like music that hadn't been released yet. The song ended, and a DJ's voice came on. That was Neon Memories by Stella Voss, hitting number 3 this week on the countdown. Up next, the new single from the Digital Prophets. But first, let's check your future forecast. Future forecast for Rebecca Hart, the DJ continued, as if reading my mind. Partly cloudy with a 90% chance of fatal collision. Current death date, September 8th, 2037, approximately 3:15 p.m., Highway 28, kilometer marker 146. Drive carefully, Rebecca. Your life expectancy is currently 14 years, but that can change depending on your choices today. My hands jerked on the wheel, and I nearly swerved into the oncoming lane. The DJ had said my name, my full name, and provided a specific death date, September 8th, 2037, 14 years from today. I punched the seek button, trying to find a different station. The radio cycled through static and landed back on 94.3. Can't change the station, Rebecca. You're tuned to your timeline now. Let's play your Death Day soundtrack. The next song was melancholic indie rock, a song about endings and goodbyes and accepting fate. I didn't recognize the artist. I turned the radio off. Complete silence. I drove for 5 minutes in quiet, trying to rationalize what I'd heard. Elaborate prank? Hacked radio signal? Some viral marketing stunt? The radio turned itself on. You can't opt out of the future, Rebecca. It's already scheduled. Let me play you something from 2037, really get you in the mood for your final drive. The music that played was unquestionably from another era, production techniques that didn't exist yet. Instrument sounds that were almost but not quite current. Lyrics referencing events that hadn't happened. It was like listening to music from 2010 in the year 2000, recognizably ahead of its time. This is Last Highway by Tomorrow's Ghosts, the DJ said. Released March 2037. It'll be playing on your car radio as you drive Highway 28 for the last time. #1 hit that week. You'll sing along, Rebecca. You always loved this song, even though you'll only hear it once. I pulled over at a Tim Hortons in Buckhorn and turned off the ignition completely, removing the key. The radio should have been dead, no power. It continued playing. Your death is scheduled for exactly 14 years from now, Rebecca. 3:15 p.m., kilometer marker 146. You'll be returning from showing a property, a beautiful lakefront cottage that won't sell for another 6 years. The buyers will be a young couple from Toronto. You'll make $18,000 in commission. Stop, I said to the empty radio. Stop this. Can't stop the future. Can only show it to you. Want to hear what songs are popular the year you die? The station played for 20 minutes while I sat in the Tim Hortons parking lot, frozen, listening to music from 2037. Every song was unfamiliar, every artist unknown, every lyric referencing a world I hadn't reached yet. There were songs about political events that hadn't happened, songs about technology that didn't exist, songs about cultural trends that hadn't emerged, all of it 14 years ahead, all of it being transmitted to my car radio from a future I apparently wouldn't survive past September 8th, 2037. Let's talk about what you'll miss, the DJ said during a break. In 2028, your daughter will get married. You'll be there, mother of the bride, beautiful ceremony. In 2030, your first grandchild will be born a boy named Daniel. You'll love him more than you thought possible. In 2034, you'll finally take that trip to Greece you've been planning. Athens, Santorini, Crete, best vacation of your life. I was crying now, tears running down my face as the disembodied DJ described my future in detail. You have 14 good years ahead, Rebecca. Successful career, loving family, health issues that scare you but turn out benign. It's a good 14 years. Then, at 3:15 p.m. on September 8th, 2037, it ends on Highway 28, at kilometer marker 146. Why are you telling me this? I whispered. Because you need to know the price of every decision. Right now, you're driving to show a property near Burley Falls. If you continue, your timeline proceeds normally 14 years, then the accident. But you have choices today that could change everything. The music stopped, and the DJ's voice became more serious. In 10 minutes, you'll receive a call from a client, a couple interested in a property on Stony Lake, asking if you can show it this afternoon instead of tomorrow. If you say yes and drive there immediately, you'll avoid an accident that's scheduled for 1:45 p.m. on Highway 28. A minor accident, just a fender bender, no one hurt, but it will delay you by exactly 90 minutes. That 90-minute delay creates a cascade effect. You'll miss meeting another client next week. That missed meeting means you won't make a sale that would have netted $50,000 in commission. Without that money, you'll make different financial decisions over the next 5 years. And your death date moves forward to 2032. So if I take the call, I die 5 years earlier? I asked. Yes. But if you decline the call and continue to Burley Falls, you keep your current timeline 14 years. The choice is yours. My phone rang. I stared at the screen. Unknown number. I didn't answer. The voicemail notification appeared. I listened to the message. A couple asking if I could show them a Stony Lake property this afternoon instead of tomorrow, exactly as the radio had predicted. I deleted the message and drove toward Burley Falls. The radio played music from 2037 for the entire drive. I heard what the world would sound like in 14 years, heard artists who'd be famous, heard songs that would define a future I'd barely reach. At the Burley Falls property, I met the clients, a young family from Ottawa looking for a weekend cottage. We toured the house, discussed their needs, talked about pricing, normal, mundane real estate work. As I finished the showing, the radio, which had been silent while I was out of the car, started playing again when I returned. Good choice, Rebecca. Timeline maintained. 14 years to destination. But we're not done yet. 3 more decision points today. Let's see if you can navigate them all. The drive home became a nightmare of predictions and choices. The radio would describe a scenario. I'd face the exact situation minutes later, and I'd have to choose correctly to maintain my optimal timeline of 14 years. Decision point 2. A hitchhiker near Buckhorn. If I picked him up, which I'd never do anyway, he'd rob me at knife point. Trauma would lead to early retirement, timeline shortened to 7 years. Decision point 3. A gas station with cheaper prices versus my usual station. Cheaper station had contaminated fuel. Car damage would require rental car next month. Rental car would be in a collision. Timeline shortened to 9 years. Decision point 4. Taking Highway 7 versus backroads to Peterborough. Highway 7 was faster, but had construction delays. Delays would cause me to miss an important client dinner, lost relationship, lost business, financial stress, timeline shortened to 11 years. Each decision was a trap. Each choice had consequences that rippled forward, shortening my life in subtle ways. The radio station from the future knew all the outcomes and guided me through the minefield of fate. By the time I reached Peterborough at 4:30 p.m., I was exhausted and terrified. The radio had predicted 12 decision points. I'd successfully navigated all 12, maintaining my timeline of 14 years. Well done, Rebecca, the DJ said. You've preserved your optimal future. September 8th, 2037, 3:15 p.m., Highway 28, kilometer marker 146. That's your scheduled termination, and nothing you did today changed it. Can I change it? I asked desperately. Can I avoid that date somehow? Of course. Every day presents decision points that affect your timeline. Some extend it, some shorten it, most maintain it. Today, you maintained. Tomorrow, you'll face new choices. For the next 14 years, you'll be making decisions that either preserve your death date or move it forward or backward. So I have free will? You have the illusion of free will. The timeline is probability-based. You're most likely to die on September 8th, 2037 at 3:15 p.m., but you could die earlier or later depending on your choices. This radio station simply broadcasts from the most probable future. Why? Why tell me this? The DJ was quiet for a moment, then. Because some people need to know. Some people live better when they understand the scope of their existence. 14 years, Rebecca. You know how long you have. Use it wisely. The radio went silent and wouldn't turn on again. I tried multiple times over the following days, nothing. Static and local stations only. CKFM 94.3 was gone, if it ever existed. But I couldn't forget what I'd heard. The music from 2037 haunted me, melodies I couldn't quite remember but recognized when similar songs were released over the following years. Artists who broke through, whose names I'd heard on that radio station years before they became famous. In 2028, my daughter got married, exactly as the DJ described. In 2030, my grandson Daniel was born. In 2034, I took that trip to Greece. Every prediction came true. Now it's September 1st, 2037. 7 days before my scheduled death date, I've been careful for 14 years, making decisions that preserve my timeline, avoiding accidents and risks. But I can't avoid September 8th. I have a showing scheduled near Burley Falls, a beautiful lakefront cottage that's been on the market for years. The buyers are a young couple from Toronto. I'll make $18,000 in commission. I could cancel. I could refuse to drive Highway 28 that day. I could change my timeline. But I've learned something over the past 14 years. The future finds a way. If I avoid Highway 28, I'll take different roads that lead to different accidents. If I don't show that property, I'll show a different property and die driving there instead. The date is fixed. Only the details are variable. September 8th, 2037, 3:15 p.m. That's when my timeline terminates, no matter what route I take to get there. I've tried finding CKFM 94.3 again, scanning through frequencies, driving the same stretch of Highway 28 where it first appeared, hoping for one more broadcast from the future. I want to know if there's any way to avoid what's coming. But the station is gone. The radio only plays present-day music, now hits from 2037 that I heard 14 years ago on that mysterious station. Every song feels like a countdown. In 7 days, I'll drive Highway 28. I'll show the property. I'll make the commission. And at 3:15 p.m., at kilometer marker 146, a transport truck will cross the center line, and I'll die exactly as scheduled. Unless I don't. Unless the radio was wrong, or lying, or showing me one possible future among thousands. Unless I have more control than I think. I've spent 14 years preparing for this. I've said everything I needed to say to my family. I've organized my affairs. I've lived fully, loved deeply, taken no day for granted because I knew exactly how many I had left. Most people don't get that gift, knowing the length of your timeline, understanding the scope of your existence. Most people live in ignorant hope that they have unlimited time. I lived with certain knowledge that I had exactly 14 years, and now those years are almost gone. Tomorrow, I'll drive Highway 28, one last time. I'll pass through Buckhorn, past the Tim Hortons where I first heard CKFM 94.3, pass all the decision points that led me to this scheduled conclusion, and at kilometer marker 146, I'll find out if the future is fixed or if I can still change it. The radio sits silent in my dashboard, but sometimes, late at night, I hear phantom music songs from 2037 bleeding through from the future station that showed me my death. They're playing my soundtrack, the songs I'll hear on my final drive. And somewhere in the static between stations, a DJ is counting down, 7 days to termination. 7 days to find out if prophecy is destiny. 7 days to discover if the girl who learned her death date can somehow survive past it. The radio knows. It's always known. And soon, so will I. The sign at the Algonquin Park entrance read, "Current occupancy, 1,847 visitors." But my passenger list showed I was carrying 16 people who weren't there. I'm Daniel Cross, 53 years old, tour bus driver for Northern Ontario, Adventures, specializing in fall colors tours through Algonquin Park. October 14th, 2023. I was driving my usual route, pick up tourists in Huntsville, drive Highway 60 through the park, stop at various lookouts, return by evening. 26 passengers boarded that morning. I counted them personally as they climbed on, checked their names against my manifest, waited for everyone to settle before departing. 26 living, breathing people excited about seeing Algonquin's famous October foliage. But when I glanced at my digital manifest, the tablet system our company implemented last year for tracking passengers, it showed 42 names. I assumed it was a glitch. The system had been buggy since installation, sometimes duplicating entries or failing to clear previous tours. I'd report it when we returned. We entered Algonquin Park at 9:15 a.m., and that's when things became wrong. The park entrance sign, one of those electronic displays showing current visitor numbers, read, "Current occupancy, 1,847 visitors." But as my bus passed the sensor, the number jumped to 1,863. 16 more than it should. Exactly the difference between my actual passenger count and the manifest count. I watched my rearview mirror as we drove deeper into the park. 26 passengers, all accounted for, all visible. But the feeling of being watched was overwhelming. Specifically, the sensation of eyes on the back of my neck from seats I knew were empty. At the first lookout, Lake of Two Rivers, I did a head count as passengers disembarked. 26 off the bus. I walked through the empty bus, checking every seat. All empty. No one hiding. No one sleeping through the stop. just empty seats, but 16 of them were warm. Not all the empty seats, specifically 16 scattered throughout the bus. Seats that held body heat, as if someone had just been sitting there. I touched the fabric distinctly warm, with the slight indentation of weight that fades slowly. I checked my manifest tablet. 42 names, and besides 16 of them were notes I hadn't written. Window seat preference, requires assistance with stairs, prone to motion sickness, celebrating anniversary. Details about passengers who didn't exist. I walked to the lookout where my actual passengers were photographing the lake and autumn colors. I counted again 26. I compared faces to the first 26 names on my manifest. All matched. The additional 16 names were Michael Ostrowski, Jennifer Park, Robert and Carol Henderson, anniversary couple, David Chen, Margaret Fitzgerald, Sarah Brennan, Thomas Kowalski, 8 others I didn't recognize. Excuse me. I approached an elderly couple from my actual passenger list. Did you see anyone else on the bus? Any passengers I might have missed? They looked at me strangely. Just the people who got on in Huntsville. Why? No reason. Just confirming my count. We reboarded and continued deeper into Algonquin. Highway 60 cuts through the southern section of the park, a corridor of stunning autumn beauty surrounded by thousands of square kilometers of wilderness. Cell service is non-existent here. We were isolated. At the second lookout, Canoe Lake, I did another head count. 26 off, 26 on. But as the last actual passenger boarded, I heard footsteps behind them. Heavy footsteps, boots on metal stairs. No one was there. The footsteps continued up the aisle, and I watched an empty seat compress as if someone sat down. The warm seat from earlier, someone was sitting there now, invisible but present. I stood frozen at the front of the bus, staring down the aisle. My actual passengers were settling in, chatting, oblivious, but I could see the evidence. 16 seats showing compression, 16 seatbelts subtly pulled across laps, 16 positions where the air seemed denser, more occupied. I was driving 42 people through Algonquin Park, 26 living, 16. The next section of Highway 60 is remote 30 kilometers between lookouts, dense forest on both sides, no facilities or services. I drove carefully, watching the road and watching my mirrors, trying to understand what was happening. At kilometer marker 32, my GPS showed a route diversion, a road branching north from Highway 60, marked on the display as alternate route, passenger delivery. There is no road at kilometer marker 32. I've driven this route 200 times in 5 years. It's unbroken forest, but as I approached, I saw it. A paved road, well-maintained, cutting north into the park. A wooden sign read, Opiongo Access Road, authorized vehicles only. I'd never seen this road before. It wasn't on any park map. My tablet chimed a notification I hadn't programmed. Route diversion required. 16 passengers must disembark at Opiongo Terminus. Failure to complete delivery will result in manifest imbalance. What the hell is manifest imbalance? I muttered. Another notification. Manifest imbalance. Condition where passenger count does not match scheduled arrivals. Results in timeline corruption. Deliver 16 passengers to restore balance. I was having a mental breakdown. Had to be. Carbon monoxide leak? Micro stroke? This wasn't real, but the road was real. The turnoff was approaching, and I felt a compulsion not quite external, not quite internal to take it. Folks, I announced over the PA system, we're making an unscheduled stop. Park maintenance issue, nothing to worry about. The actual passengers murmured, but didn't object. I turned onto the Opiongo Access Road and immediately felt the temperature drop. Not gradually, instantly, like driving into a refrigerated space. My breath fogged. The passengers noticed, reaching for jackets and sweaters. The windows frosted at the edges. The road climbed into terrain that shouldn't exist. Algonquin's topography is rolling hills, not mountains, but we were ascending steeply. The forest changed too, becoming older, darker, trees that looked centuries old instead of the typical mixed growth. After 15 minutes, The road ended at a clearing surrounding a large wooden lodge. The architecture was early 20th century log construction, stone chimney, steep roof. A sign over the door read, Opiongo Way Station, Est, 1923. The clearing held dozens of vehicles, cars, trucks, buses like mine, all empty, all covered in dust and fallen leaves, looking abandoned for years. My tablet chimed, arrival confirmed. I stood and turned to face the bus. 26 actual passengers stared at me expectantly, and in the 16 warm seats, I finally saw them. Not clearly, they were translucent, flickering, like poor-quality holograms, but visible. People in various ages and styles of clothing, some contemporary, some decades old, all looking at me with expressions of relief. One of them stood a middle-aged man in a business suit that looked 1980s vintage. He walked down the aisle, passed within inches of me, and I felt cold radiate from him. He stepped off the bus, and the moment his foot touched the clearing's ground, he became solid, fully real. He turned back and smiled at me, then walked toward the lodge. The other 15 followed. One by one, they disembarked, became solid, and walked to the lodge. The last was a young woman in modern clothing, Sarah Brennan, according to the manifest, who paused at the door. "Thank you," she said. Her voice was distant, like hearing someone speak from another room. Every fall, we board the buses in Huntsville, hoping this is the year the driver sees us. You're the first in decades who could. "What is this place?" I asked. "Way station, for people who died in Algonquin but couldn't leave. The park holds us. We're tied to the location of our deaths, walking the same routes forever, trying to reach the exit. But the only way out is through this place. And the only way to get here is if someone living can see us and bring us." "How did you die?" "Different ways. Car accidents on Highway 60, mostly. Lost hikers, drownings. Michael, the first man off the bus, died in a plane crash in '87. His Cessna went down in the backcountry. Took them 4 years to find the wreckage. Jennifer drowned in Canoe Lake in '93. The Hendersons had an anniversary trip in 2008. Their car went off the road during a storm." "And you?" She smiled sadly. "I died 3 weeks ago. Solo camping trip, bear attack. I've been boarding buses at the park entrance every day, hoping someone would see me." "What happens now?" "You go into the lodge, and then what?" "Then we leave. Not back to life, but forward to wherever comes next. The way station is the exit from Algonquin. Once we're here, we're free." She walked to the lodge and disappeared inside. The door closed behind her. I stood in the clearing, shivering in the unnatural cold, staring at the dozens of abandoned vehicles. How many drivers had made this delivery over the decades? How many had seen the invisible passengers and brought them to the way station? My tablet chimed. Manifest balanced. Return to Highway 60. Continue tour. I got back on the bus. My 26 actual passengers were confused, but calm. They'd seen the 16 ghosts disembark, seen them walk to the lodge. But their expressions suggested they were already forgetting, the memory fading like a dream. "Just a quick stop," I said over the PA. I drove back down the Opiongo Access Road, and when I reached Highway 60, I looked back. The turnoff was gone. No road, no sign. We completed the tour normally. At the park exit, the electronic sign read, "Current occupancy, 1,831 visitors, down 16 from when we'd entered." The 16 ghosts had left Algonquin. Back in Huntsville, I reported nothing. What would I say? I checked my tablet after passengers disembarked. The manifest showed 26 names, the correct count. The additional 16 were gone. No record they'd ever been listed, but I kept a screenshot from earlier showing all 42 names. Proof, or as close to proof as I'd get. I researched the names that night. Michael Ostrovsky, plane crash, 1987, confirmed. Jennifer Park, drowning. Canoe Lake, 1993, confirmed. Robert and Carol Henderson, car accident, Highway 60, 2008, confirmed. Sarah Brennan, bear attack, solo camper, September 2023, Confirmed. All 16 names matched real people who died in Algonquin Park over the past 4 decades. I'd transported their ghosts to the way station. I'd helped them leave the park that had held them since their deaths. I've driven the Algonquin tour 53 times since October 14th. 41 of those tours had additional passengers on my manifest, anywhere from 3 to 28 extra names, all invisible, all ghosts of people who died in the park. Each time, I take the Opiongo Access Road diversion. Each time, I deliver them to the way station. Each time, they become solid as they disembark and walk into the lodge, finally free. The park holds them until a driver can see them and provide passage. Most drivers can't. They drive Highway 60 with 26 living passengers, oblivious to the dozen ghosts sitting in empty seats, desperate for escape. I can see them. I don't know why. Some sensitivity, some openness to the dead, some quality that makes me visible to them as they are to me. The way station appears for me every time. The road materializes at kilometer marker 32, and I take it, and I deliver the dead to their exit. My company doesn't question the slight route deviations. The GPS logs show standard Highway 60 travel. The Opiongo Access Road doesn't register, doesn't officially exist, but it's there. A road between the living world and whatever comes next, accessible only to those who can see both sides. Last week, I drove a tour with 63 people on my manifest, 30 living passengers and 33 ghosts, 33 people who died in Algonquin over the decades, all boarding my bus at once, all hoping this was finally their ride to the way station. It took 3 trips down the Opiongo Access Road to deliver them all. The way station has a capacity limit, apparently, 15 at a time, walking into the lodge, becoming solid, becoming free. Among the 33 was a bus driver. Older man, wearing a uniform from the 1970s, name tag reading, Frank. "I used to do what you do," he said as he prepared to disembark. "Drove tours through Algonquin for 20 years. Heart attack at the wheel in 76, right here on Highway 60. Bus went off the road, killed me and 3 passengers. We've all been boarding buses ever since, trying to reach the way station." "You've been riding for 47 years? Felt like centuries. Every October, buses come through, and we board, and the drivers can't see us, so we just ride in circles, back and forth on Highway 60, trapped. You're the first driver since my death who could see us. Thank you for finally taking us there." He walked into the lodge with his 3 passengers from that 76 crash, all of them solid, all of them finally delivered. I've started keeping a log, names, death dates, circumstances, documenting everyone I transport to the way station. 417 people so far, across 53 tours. 417 ghosts freed from Algonquin Park because I could see them and knew where to take them. How many more are waiting? The park is vast, 7,653 square kilometers. People have been dying there since it opened in 1893. Accidents, attacks, exposure, drowning, plane crashes, simple misadventure. Not all of them leave. Some get trapped, tied to the location of their deaths, walking the same routes eternally until someone living can provide passage. I'm that someone now, the driver who sees the dead, the one who takes the road that doesn't exist, the ferryman of Highway 60, transporting ghosts to the way station where they can finally exit the park that held them. Tomorrow, I drive another tour. My manifest already shows 48 names, but only 32 people have booked. 16 more ghosts waiting at the Huntsville pickup point, hoping I'll see them, hoping I'll take them to Opiongo. I will. I always do. Because everyone deserves to leave eventually. Everyone deserves an exit from the place they died. And as long as I'm driving Highway 60, as long as I can see the passengers others can't, I'll keep making the delivery, keep taking the road at kilometer marker 32, keep watching the ghosts become solid and walk into the lodge, keep balancing the manifest between the living and the dead. The way station is always waiting. The road always appears for those who can see it. And the dead are always boarding, always hoping, always counting on drivers like me to take them somewhere they can't reach on their own. I am the Highway 60 ferryman, and my bus runs between worlds.